Turn your radios up. Turn your radios up. Y'all know what this is. Y'all know who this is. B-Eazy, that dude, an impromptu stream, back with another one. This one is gonna be interesting. It's gonna be a banger. But shout out to my people that's already in the building. You know it's definitely gonna be a doozy. And I don't like to keep y'all waiting, so before we get this thing started, you know, I gotta hit you.
If you know the song, sing along. Yeah, you're right.
私も地元民と言っても実は世代です。もう友達できたの？うん。ぶっとこっち見ない。
This promethazine got me leaning like a cholo in the club. I'm 20 deep. I don't be riding solo. Pull some bad bitches, they vanilla and cocoa. They wanna take some photos when we kick it out in Soho. Chicks are showing tits and popping pussy for my promo. Told them like juvenile, baby, move it for me slow-mo. Then I'm right back to the block, cause I keep getting moto. I be flipping, not shrinking. I don't give a fuck about no ho, no ho. This nigga name ain't D-Lo, but pimpin' these bitches and stacking this bread forever be my stilo. This is B-Eazy, that dude in the trap making packs move. If I ever go broke, then I'm about to pull a jack move. Since a nigga healthy, I don't even gotta worry. With my bitch from Fiji, eating tandoori and chicken curry. That ism is really indie. My pimp game international. I design my own clothes, so I be always looking fashionable. Here's a couple facts about me that y'all didn't know. Some of y'all be getting bread, but I be getting bigger, dawg. I got bigger guns and a whole lot of bad. And we are activated, so we gonna get right into this thing. Y'all know I don't like to keep y'all waiting. So y'all seen the title, y'all seen the thumbnail. In case y'all don't know, you should know who Don Lemon is. Don Lemon is a person who used to be on CNN. He was a journalist. Now he's doing this independent thing. There's a massive outcry right now, the way ICE is conducting their enforcement business. So there's protests happening all over the country. Minnesota, Minneapolis is a hotbed for these ICE protests. Don Lemon is there as a independent journalist, allegedly, but it seems like he's there to kind of favor and push propaganda for one side. However, some would say that his journalism displayed was impartial, but improper based on the setting. So this is a quick rundown of his side, and then I'm going to get into a series of videos, and then ultimately I will be breaking down a debate. Now, if anybody wants to watch these videos uninterrupted, I will let you know where to find them. Sometimes people complain, but these are reactions to the video, so they're not going to be uninterrupted. I'm going to have to pause it so I don't get copyright strikes, make it transformative. I will try to play it at length so you get the context. I can always rewind it back. So if people want to watch the videos uninterrupted without commentary, you can always go to the place that I tell you where to find them, or just a simple search. All I typed in was Don Lemon Church and various videos came up. So let's get right into it. Let me know if you guys have any issues hearing this.
That they invited folks out.
This is Operation Pull Up, more of a clandestine operation. We show up somewhere. They don't expect us to come there. And then we disrupt business as usual.
So right now it's kind of mayhem. We're not part of the activists, but we're here just reporting on them. Did they explain to you why they're here?
They did not.
They said that there is someone here in Easterwood, someone who is a member of ICE, and he's a pastor of the church.
Our church had gathered for worship, which we do every Sunday. We asked them to leave, and they obviously have not left.
So this is what the First Amendment is about the freedom to protest.
There's a varying array of views in this church on politics of immigration. Recognize the complexity of the issue.
This shows you just how divided America is. When you look at the protesters here, and then you look at the people there who are praying, and you know what was the interesting thing? If these two groups could just get together, they might figure out what to do.
I don't necessarily agree with everything that's going on in the Twin Cities right now, but I don't think it's good to fight fire with fire. I think it's good to speak up. I think it's good to protest, but I think it's better to do it in a peaceful way.
Yeah, that was interesting to watch. This guy here, look, he's hugging his kid. And, you know, I imagine it's uncomfortable and traumatic for the people here. They think you lost and this didn't accomplish anything, and you went into their house, the house of the Lord.
The reality is the house of the Lord is a place where love lives. It's not a place where you can have a pastor masquerading as the director for the field office of ICE in St. Paul.
This is an operation that.
Okay, so that video is just a quick rundown and giving context was going to set the stage for some of these other videos that I'm going to react to. So just give me one moment and I'm going to pull up the other videos. I'm going to play a video from Fox News, a video from Democracy Now! So it will be the woman who helped organize the protest. She'll be giving her perspective. Fox News, obviously, you know, they're going to give a contrarian perspective. And then there's Krystal Ball, Sagar, and Jetty, Breaking Points. They had a debate, and I'm sure you can understand how that went or assume how that went. We'll be getting into all of it. So let's pull up the next video right here. This is from Fox News. You can go to the Fox News YouTube channel to watch this video uninterrupted. It's titled, Don Lemon Fires Back After Anti-ICE Mob Targets Church. I stand by my reporting. Let's get into it.
The Department of Justice is investigating the anti-ICE protesters who disrupted services at a church in Minnesota over the weekend.
But the state's attorney general claims the demonstrators and journalist Don Lemon, who was with them, did not break the federal law the DOJ is accusing them of. Doug Lazater joins us live from Washington with all the details. Hi, Doug.
Carly and Todd, good morning. This was an extraordinary escalation of the protests in Minnesota, the storming of church. Now, here's how this played out. As former CNN host Don Lemon joined with protesters who believed one of the pastors at a church in St. Paul had connections to ICE.
We're here to worship. We're here to worship Jesus because that's the hope of these cities. That's the hope of the world is Jesus Christ.
I want to be very respectful. Please don't push me, though.
We're here to worship Jesus. Yes. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Okay. That's why we're here. That's what we're.
Did y'all see a push right there? Let me rewind that back. Come on, Don. Look, I know like you're kind of moist and you can be a bit effeminate and emotional, but let's call balls and strikes here. Did y'all see him push? Like where that must have been the most softest covert push ever. And then if someone pushes them, I push back. I don't say, please don't push me. Could you not push me? Nah, bro, you push me, I got to get my get back. You push me, I push back. And now I'll let you know, don't push me. You can't just get that push off and then don't push me. Yeah, come on, bro. Have some nuts, man. So let's rewind that back and see. Did Don Lemon get pushed?
Paul had connections to ICE.
We're here to worship. We're here to worship Jesus because that's the hope of these cities. That's the hope of the world is Jesus Christ.
I want to be very respectful. Please don't push me, though.
We're here to worship Jesus.
Yes.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Okay. That's why we're here.
Now we can only see from the angle we can only see from the angle that is showing here. It looks like his hand might be touching Don Lemon, but a push, I don't know. But was he trying to create a victim moment? and say, oh, look, he's homophobic. He pushed me. Like, bruh, I can't let him get this off. I didn't see this as a push. If he said don't nudge me, I would have gave him that. Don't. If a man says don't nudge him, right? If he said don't bump me, but push, I don't know. I guess this is considered a push. All right, let's get back into the video.
Jesus Christ.
I want to be very respectful. Please don't push me, though.
We're here to worship Jesus.
Yes.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why we're here. That's what we're about.
Do you think Jesus would be understanding
We're about
and love these folks?
We're about spreading the love of Jesus.
But did you try to talk to them as a
No
Christian?
one is willing to talk.
Minnesota's Attorney General says protesters who stormed that church did not violate what's called.
And of course, I didn't forget about y'all. I would be remiss without giving a shout out, none other than the Brody. Hopefully you still watching live. JB Quinn, my Brody, Venom, S. Dot in the building. None other than Shy-Rock King Black. What it do in the building. Roger Meadows. I was on the fence. Do I want to do this? My brother reached out to me, told me it would be interesting. I looked at the landscape of things and said, you know what? I'm going to give it a go. So shout out to Roger Meadows, Political Dynamo, my boy from NY. What it do in the building. And of course, we got the illustrious, the lovely, the sophisticated Miss Jackie Gaines doing what the moderator is supposed to do. Hardworking and always coming through, showing love. Jackie Gaines in the building. And we got A-Tay-Bay. Tay-Bay-Bay. A-Tay-Bay. Salute in the building. And looks like a new person. Shout out. Sharon Thompson, or is it Sharon? Is it Sharon or Sharon? It looks like Sharon, so I'm going to say Sharon or Sharon. Salute. Let's get back into the video.
The Federal FACE Act, but the Justice Department may not see it that way.
What you saw there was anti-Christian, anti-law enforcement rioters storming a church in this country, and that's a violation of law, and we are absolutely investigating. Our Civil Rights Unit has already sent experts out to Minneapolis today. The Civil Rights Unit, the U.S. Attorney's Office, the FBI, DHS is investigating this, because what you saw the fear in the eyes of the members of that church.
Now, Lemon, meantime, defended his actions, saying this in a statement: "It's notable that I've been cast as the face of a protest I was covering as a journalist, especially since I wasn't the only reporter there. That framing is telling. I stand by my reporting." Lemon has said that racism is a part of the ongoing immigration enforcement efforts. He has also said that some of his critics have a sense of entitlement based on white supremacy. Todd and Carl.
Yeah, the double down did not end there. Doug, thank you. For more on the double down from Don Lemon, let's bring in Tony Perkins, president of the Family Research Council, a former pastor and police officer. You got quite a resume there, Tony. Lemon doubling down in an interview, Doug alluded to this, following that church raid, saying, "This is not the type of Christianity I practice," and accusing that particular church of white supremacy. Your response, Tony?
Well, it's very telling. What we're seeing here is a very clear violation of the FACE Act, a law going back to Bill Clinton in the 1990s that was designed to protect abortion clinics, but Orrin Hatch put a provision in there to protect churches. They violated it. But we have to understand there's something bigger here. This is the hostility toward religion in this country has been latent for some time. Now it has become blatant, this hatred toward God. And going back to something that House Speaker Mike Johnson said before the Parliament just about an hour ago, that what is taught in the classroom in one.
So now I don't agree with the ICE people going, and then when they say stormed, right? No one asked them to clearly define what they mean. See, when you talk about the January 6th, you can physically see them storming the Capitol and breaking things and threatening people and doing acts of violence and chaotic mayhem. When they said that these people stormed the church, did they run in there or did they walk calmly and slowly in there? What do they mean by storm? Are they just saying them yelling and disrupting? Okay, say they disrupted. Disrupted and storming is not the same thing. So no one asked them to clearly define, what do you mean by storming? Maybe they did run in there or maybe they didn't. I'm not saying it's cool either way, but I'm asking, what do they mean by storming? I think that's a pretty critical component to the specificity of what went on with the things that they're so vehemently against.
Blatant, this hatred toward God.
And then another thing, since when, if you protest, you can say it was inappropriate and bad timing, wrong place, wrong time. Okay, cool. But whether you agree with the protest or not, it's a constitutional right. We can't play around and say we're a nation of laws and always kind of try to constitution thump. And then you get mad when someone is protesting at a place that you don't want them to protest at. I don't agree with them just going in churches and protesting, but especially for certain issues, you know, for any issue, realistically, that's just my perspective. But yeah, it's a constitutional right to protest. And whether they broke law on this one is still to be determined. It's up for interpretation. If it's a Democratic DOJ, they're going to say, no, you didn't break the law. If it's a Republican DOJ, they're going to say, yeah, there's some sort of caveat or contingent in there that we can say, yeah, you did. But protesting, just because you don't agree with it, that doesn't mean that you hate God. So this is this kind of what I call bloviating biblical blather, where they try to use this religiosity to put you in. So that's the real mind virus. They talking about the woke mind virus. No, it's the religious mind virus. So let's get into the video.
Orrin Hatch put a provision in there to protect churches. They violated it. But we have to understand there's something bigger here. This is the hostility toward religion in this country has been latent for some time. Now it has become blatant, this hatred toward God. And going back to something that House Speaker Mike Johnson said before the Parliament just about an hour ago, that what is taught in the classroom in one generation will become the ruling philosophy of the next generation in government. And that's what we see. This is what has been taught, this anti-Christian, anti-Western values to lead to a place where someone who claims to be a journalist charging into a church, interrupting a Sunday morning worship service. Like, this is something that we cannot tolerate in our country. Protest, yeah, fine. You can go on the street, stand out on the street. But when you're breaking into a church service, interrupting a worship service, we've crossed a new red line.
So this is where they get a little bit contradictory. Let's just call it that. They'll say stand on the street. Okay, fine. Every church is on a street unless it's on some private land and acreage where it's, you know, just kind of out in the boondocks. Most of them are on main and public streets. So fine, they stand on the street that make a big enough presence outside of the church. He will be complaining about that. So he's pretending, he's hedging and saying, look, we support protests, right? It's your constitutional right. Do it on the street. Okay, we'll do it on the street outside of the church. And he has an issue with that as well. So he's just trying to frame the discussion in his favor and say that, no, the only issue is that they stormed into the church. But no one has clearly defined what stormed in means, right? Did they run in? Were they violent? Did they push people out the way? That sounds like storming. Look up the footage of January 6th if you want to see what storming looks like. Did they do that into this church? And if they didn't, why are we using extra inflammatory words? You know, they always talk about the left and the wokies trying to incite something. Who and what is he trying to incite?
Yeah, you mentioned the speaker's speech just moments ago. He issued the phrase, freedom will destroy itself if it has no purpose. That is a reflection on a historical speech made by a historical figure. I'm just blanking on it. I believe that was Margaret Thatcher. But he also emphasized the importance of moral and religious foundational support. You need that support to prop up.
Had to give a shout out to Sunlight from the Sunshine State, shining bright like a diamond. What it do in the building?
That freedom. And Tony, you also invoked the FACE Act. I want to let the audience know exactly what it says. Quote, makes it a crime for someone who by threat of force or by physical obstruction intentionally injures, intimidates, or interferes with any person lawfully exercising or seeking to exercise the First Amendment right of religious freedom at a place of religious worship. As you referred to the Orrin Hatch Amendment to that law, Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon responding to Don Lemon, posting the following: a house of worship is not a public forum for your protest. It is a space protected from exactly such acts by federal, criminal, and civil laws. Nor does the First Amendment protect your pseudo-journalism of disruption. Exercise the First Amendment right by physical obstruction. Let the audience know exactly what it says. Quote, makes it a crime for someone who by threat of force or by
So this is the law right here that they're trying to get the protesters on. The DOJ is allegedly going after Don Lemon. So, like I said, all of these laws are up for interpretation. They say we're a nation of laws, but it's really a nation of individuals who choose when to enforce the law, because there's a law on the books that they can prosecute you for anything. It's just up to the discretion of those in power if they choose to enforce the law. If this was a Biden DOJ, Don Lemon is not under threat. A Trump DOJ, they'll find any little ordinance or something in the law to say, hey, look, we can, we might have legal action here. But they saying it makes it a crime for someone who by threat, force, or physical obstruction intentionally injures, intimidates, or interferes with. So when the dude said that they stormed in, so were they being physically obstructed or were they physically obstructing people? So we need to know, was anyone threatened? Was there force on the table? Was there physical obstruction? Were there any injuries? Because they're saying this is the U.S. code. It's 18 U.S. code 248. So y'all can look that up. But were these protesters breaking the law? What do y'all think? Should they be prosecuted? And if the protesters broke the law, shouldn't he be rounding up all of the protesters? Instead, they're going after Don Lemon. So is this a nation of laws or is this a nation of petty beefs? I don't like what Don Lemon is saying, so we're going to lock you up. Is this like Hillary all over again? Lock her up. This is the lock him up Don Lemon edition. And then you see violent, thuggish ruffians on January 6th. And you know what? Trump brings out the tiniest violin ever known to man and says that they are victims. They were persecuted. They need reparations and they need a pardon as well because they were victims. But somehow Don Lemon is a domestic terrorist. What are we really talking about here? But people because they got Trump nuts all in their mouth and other orifices, they'll champion this stuff on, cheerleading for it. Let's get back into the video.
Let the audience know exactly what it says. Quote, makes it a crime for someone who by threat of force or by physical obstruction intentionally injures, intimidates, or interferes with any person lawfully exercising or seeking to exercise the First Amendment right of religious freedom at a place of religious worship. As you referred,
all of this is pseudo journalism because they talk about they don't even give you the news anymore. It's all about infotainment. So they're giving you information in a sensational and entertaining way. but you're not really learning or gaining anything. The little tidbits that you can take from the show, you can get a more in-depth rundown from ChatGPT, Claude AI, Google Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, excuse me. Those are just to name a few. Or you can go to this. Here's a word that people haven't heard in a while. Library. What's that? Yeah, you can go to the library and learn more than what you gonna learn from these political stooges. And when it comes to Don Lemon is, of course, a tool of the establishment. When he left CNN, he wasn't standing on no business. He was a corporate shill. He was a buck-broken, bent-over bozo who perpetuated anti-black narratives. And then now he's acting like he's some sort of bastion for standing up for black people, but he doesn't really stand up for black people. Every time he acts like he's standing up for black people, then he frames it into marginalized groups, overlooked communities, marginalized groups, minorities, people of color. It's like, bro, I thought you said you were standing on black business for black people. Look, we support universal policies and the rising tide lifts all boats, but all of that issues, when y'all say, what about Chicago? Y'all ain't talking about a rising tide. Y'all talking about the black community specifically. So we need to specifically focus on our business. Don Lemon ain't gonna stand on no business like this, but he'll say, they're attacking me. I'm a black gay man. So somehow, because he said that, he's standing up for black people, and black people are supposed to crash out. Yeah, well, that is our brother. He is black. He is gay. We know how it is to be oppressed and marginalized and subjugated. So we need to stand up for Don Lemon. No, Don Lemon, you need to hold your own nuts. Have your zaddy hold your own nuts, bruh. This dude got millions and millions and millions of dollars, but we supposed to come to the aid of him? What are we really talking about? What are we saying? This dude can get the most high-powered lawyer. He probably has security. He has a husband to protect him. Don Lemon is not a victim. And he spent most of his career on CNN saying that black people are not victims. But somehow we're supposed to come to his aid. No, you're not a victim. This country isn't racist. White supremacy doesn't exist. Everything is fine. It's flip-flops and sandals, peaches and cream. Hold your own nuts.
To the Orrin Hatch amendment to that law. Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon responding to Don Lemon, posting the following: a house of worship is not a public forum for your protest. It is a space protected from exactly such acts by federal, criminal, and civil laws. Nor does the First Amendment protect your pseudo-journalism of disrupting a prayer service. You are on notice. Do you think that everyone involved in this church invasion, Tony, needs to...
You know what? I got time today, so I gotta cook. So the right, and this shows you the hypocrisy of the MAGA maniacs. They'll promote Nick Shirley because he made some merch about the Somalis that said the Leering Center. Okay, I thought that was funny, and it was good to capitalize off that. Outside of that, he's been caught lying, lie after lie. So we're supposed to overlook the lies because you agree with them on certain other stuff. And then they're saying he's exposing this stuff. So you guys said that you guys were the high IQs. Y'all was too busy calling us low IQ sub-Saharan niggers, right? Y'all was talking about black on black crime and all of this other stuff. Okay, fine, right? Y'all was talking about George Floyd, BLM. Meanwhile, y'all was ignoring the people of the J community who was abusing welfare, who was living off the fat of the land and government assistance. Everything y'all was blaming us for, this community that you allegedly act like you hate, they were doing it 10 times over. But you have no smoke for them. You say that this community secretly runs society, but you gonna blame some powerless thug in Chicago? And who is control? Like, what black person in Chicago or Oakland is making the house prices be over 400,000 for the average house cost? What black person in black coat is Sexy Red twerking the reason that gas prices are high? Is it because people is saying nigga too much in rap music? Is that the reason why the interest rates are high? So all of this stuff that they want to blame black people for is really people in their community. And people like Nick Shirley ain't gonna call that out. That he's only trying to do the only video, his recent video that went viral is because they're on some it's the Jews type stuff. And I always ask them, there's no race called Jewish. What race are those people? No. Seriously, for the US Census, when the paper is put in front of them and there's a box to check, there's no Jewish box. Yeah, there's a other box that could check other, but is that what's being checked? And then if you think they're so problematic to your community, why are you not doing nothing about it? You think that the Jays are running the world and you talking about George Floyd? How long ago did George Floyd get unalived? George Floyd is a more topic of discussion than Peter Thiel, Larry Ellison, Miriam Adelson, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos. Who has ruined your life more? Jeff Bezos? Elon Musk puts an AI center in Memphis and poisons the neighborhood. But then you talking about black on black crime. Elon Musk is slowly unaliving people with his poison, but he's seen as some benevolent figure. Elon Musk don't care about white babies. We need more white babies. And then he turns in and hires a bunch of H-1B Indians that look like Vivek Ramaswamy. So, I mean, I can go on, but Nick Shirley won't really talk about this stuff, will he? And he's been propped up by the establishment, paid by, Zio, APAC, oligarch, elite. All the people say drain the swamp. Nick Shirley is paid for and funded by the swamp, and they like, he made some merch and he exposed this stuff, but I thought you guys were high IQ. How didn't you already know this stuff was going on? So is your IQ not that high after all? It's okay to admit it.
To be prosecuted as a way to deter future incidents like this.
I do think that those who violated the law need to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Now, you saw Pastor Parnell having this conversation with Don Lemon, very gracious in his conversation, but very clear. This is a worship service. We're worshiping the Lord Jesus Christ. You're welcome to come in and be a part of that worship service, but you're not free to disrupt it and to intimidate.
And y'all know the main thing, the black community has an accountability problem. Okay, what non-white people, what white people, what Jewish people are taking accountability for the Epstein files? Epstein was Jewish, right? Where's the Jewish accountability? Most of the people in those files are white. Where's the white accountability? Most of the girls that were allegedly trafficked, abused, assaulted, molested, forcibly penetrated once they were underage, most of the victims were white. So it was white on white crime. What white figure, what white system or institution has taken accountability for it? They're too busy telling black people to take accountability. If some musty, crusty, dusty nigga in Oakland, Chicago, or Baltimore does a drive-by, somehow the entire black community has to answer for it. Epstein, a white Jewish person, runs a historically epic, in a bad way, pedo ring across the entire globe, not the country, the entire globe. And no one is telling the community that he's from to take accountability from it. I didn't know that nigga that did a drive-by in Chicago. I'm in California. I'm in the studio. Somebody does a drive-by on the Oakland block, a Pittsburgh, Vallejo, Fairfield Street, and somehow I have to take accountability for it. See, that's the problem, man. We need to take accountability. Okay, you're right. We do. So doesn't that mean every group has to take accountability? And we need to start using terms like brown on brown crime and white on white crime and Jewish on Jewish crime, Asian on Asian crime. Shouldn't we use those terms more often? Why is it only black on black crime? They say that we lived in a colorblind society. This is what Ronald Reagan was saying, and people bought into it. He hated MLK, but Reagan passed the MLK Day, which we recently just celebrated, right? And he said his dream was celebrate. His dream has finally come. We live in a colorblind society, and racism is a thing in the past. So if we live in a colorblind society, how do you only see color when it's crime? Stop making it about race, bro. Don't judge him by the color of his skin. Some other dude does a crime, and what's the first thing that people want to know? What race was he? But I thought you just said don't make it about race. So you do want to make it about race, but you only want to frame the question or the narrative around a particular race and say that this race has this inherent disposition, or they have a proclivity for this. You want to dissect a certain race, but not have your race dissected. Some will call that hypocritical.
Us in what we're doing. And so I think the law needs to be enforced. As a police officer back in the 90s, when they were using this against pro-lifers, I've long advocated that those who don't like the law, if you want to make it go away, apply it to the left. And I think this is the opportunity to do that, to ensure that religious.
Well, damn, I'm trying to get into the video. I might just kind of just move on to the video because this dude is babbling and it's Fox News. So y'all kind of get the drift of what was said. So I'm going to respond to some of the comments and then I'll just bring up the Democracy Now! Video because you can get the gist of this video. But Roger says, anyone can say I was intimidated. There is no concrete proof to show you were intimidated. Injury is something you can prove. Well, this is also what happened with the whole Stop Asian Hate campaign. In the media, they were framing it around hate crimes. When it got to the legislation, they said hate incidents. An incident can be anything. You know what an incident is? Someone saying you have the Kung flu, which Donald Trump, a white dude, started. Someone saying go back to China. That's an incident. Out here in California, there were two black girls who got into it with an Asian woman. She's speaking her language. Who knows what type of slurs and epithets she was saying? And they tell her, hey, you don't like it here, go back to your country, go back to China. That somehow was framed as a hate incident, and they were penalized for it as if it was a crime. So many of the Stop Asian Hate, the crimes, they were actually incidents. They just called it a crime so it seems more severe. And it paled in comparison to what black people had faced. The year that they passed what they called it, the COVID-19, they tried to make it as if it was an all lives matter hate crime bill. But what it was pretty much an Asian hate crime bill. They called it the C-19 hate crime bill, but they denounced Asian hate and mentioned Asians over 14 times specifically. They didn't mention black people, white people, or no other group, but they did mention Asians over 14 times. Not only that, there were hundreds of millions funneled to specifically Asian organizations. Nobody was calling it DEI. Nobody was calling it affirmative action. They were saying that Asians were being attacked. Most of the Asians that were being attacked was by white men, but they framed some black people in New York who a lot of them was not foundational black American. They were immigrants from another country, maybe Jamaica, maybe it was a dark-skinned Dominican, but it was framed as if black people were just disproportionately attacking Asians, when that wasn't the case. When you looked up the numbers, the metrics from the incidents, it was mostly white people, and most of it was rhetoric. So they were getting their feelings hurt because people were calling them. It's like they don't mind us being called nigga and nigger, but if you say go back to your country, suddenly that's a hate incident. Like, come on now. They call us snowflakes because you don't want to be called the N-word, but you can't even handle someone calling you an illegal alien or saying go back to your country, whether they should be saying that or not. I mean, get over it, right? They say sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never what? All right, let's play a little bit more of the video.
Freedom in this country is fully protected, and this is one way to do it.
Same church, different pew, no pun intended to that last answer you just gave and your original answer. But why do you think the so-called tolerant left has become so intolerant of religion on the whole, specifically Christianity and Judaism, Tony?
Well, because there is a standard, a biblical truth. Christians, this church is a Southern Baptist church affiliated with the Southern Baptists. They still believe the Bible. They believe the Word of God. And worship, we often hear about the
So most of the people in power and most of the people responsible in the fraud were white. Yeah, there were a lot of Somalis, so they should be rightfully the people, not the entire community. The people who were corrupt and responsible, they should be rightly pointed out and blamed. But they talk about Somalis have a culture of scamming and corruption, and they're able to say, look, this is the receipt for us to prove this culture of scamming within segments of the Somali community, right? Why isn't that same psychoanalysis being done for white people? Because they say the fraud is allegedly up to 9 billion. Most of those billions went to white people. So most of the money went to white people, but somehow it's Somali scammering. No, there were Somalis who participated in the white-led, white orchestrated thing. No one is talking about accountability. No one is saying who raised these people. Somehow this isn't white culture, right? They want to convince you that someone saying nigga in a rap song and twerking on a video is worse than them stealing billions of your taxpayer dollars and blaming it on a melanated group who was complicit in it. You know what I mean? It's like they robbed the bank. You get away with, man, you got $100 million, man. Like you should be ashamed of yourself. Yeah, but I robbed the bank with some people who got $1 billion, $1 billion and change. Who is really worse? You're framing one as a criminal and the other was just, mental health issue, or they made a mistake, you know what I mean? Or, don't judge them by one misdeed. It turns into that, turn the other cheek and all these other stuff. It's like, nah, keep the same energy as if this was a foundational Black American. There wouldn't be any sympathy, empathy, or any of that. They would be looking for their fathers who raised these people. What type of environment did they grow up in? Who raised the people that was stealing billions of dollars? Who raised the white people? I just want to know, because if people who raise up in a broken home, all they end up doing is being drugged out and occasionally doing some violent crime that they end up being locked up for, held accountable, and some other people grow up with a silver spoon, do a bunch of crime and steal billions of dollars. Which one is really worse? You're supposed to know better. You're saying that these people are low IQ, so they're just inherently prone to criminality, but you're not. You're a benevolent Christian, grew up with a silver spoon in a white Christian nation, right? Isn't that the narrative that you guys like to push? So what is your excuse for swindling, bamboozling, embezzling, stealing, extracting billions of dollars from taxpayers? What's the excuse? Where's the accountability? And whose culture is this?
Freedom of worship. It's not just the ability to go to a church on a Sunday morning. It's the ability to live your life according to your faith. That's the problem that many have with Orthodox Christianity or Judaism, is that people actually live by their faith. They believe that God defines what life is. He defines what human sexuality is. He defines what marriage is. And that is really the bottom line. I think like people like Don Lemon have a problem with, is that there is transcendent truth by which people live their lives.
Religion is such an important foundation in whatever you do, no matter the religion. And I think that is a vital point that you just made, Tony.
Okay, so just give me a moment. I'm going to pull up the next video. Just let me get that prepared. And this comment right here, I do concur with. Let me read the comment while I'm finding the video. Guess who was in charge of immigration for Obama? Tom Holman. Plus, Obama gave him a medal for it. Yes, they called Obama the deporter in chief. I've talked to people. I didn't really have to debate them because, they would have got destroyed in the debate. So we just had a discussion. So within the people that I talk to, many of them end up conceding that they support the deportations. They just want it done in a more sanitized way. So that's ultimately what this is about. You have to press people on specific questions. Instead, people allow these sensational narratives to run amok, and people don't know what they're arguing against or for. Yes, I told you, both parties support open borders. So they flood the country with specifically undocumented immigrants who they call illegal aliens, right? People say you can't say that. It's like, actually, you can, because politicians have been saying that forever, and it's a legal term. Now, the Democrats have been in office more than the Republicans. Why didn't they get that term eradicated from the legal jargon? So if it's part of the legal jargon, why wouldn't I use it? Like, this term didn't come out of the void, but they're acting like Tom Homan is just this predatory monster. The same things that he's doing under Trump's admin, he did it under Obama. And actually, he was more effective under Obama. Why? Because Obama's numbers were astronomical compared to Trump. Trump had a lofty goal of 1 million deportations a year. He's nowhere close to meeting that goal. His deportation numbers are below Biden's and below Obama's. So he's doing more controversial deportations, more theatrical deportations. But in terms of the raw numbers, yeah, mass deportations is just not happening. And shout out to Tutneys, says exactly. I keep saying no one demands the YTs and others to hold themselves accountable for creating gang, drug, X trafficking, culture, edo, corn, global atrocities, etc. Yeah, they'll talk about, man, I don't want my daughters to turn out and to be a slut. I don't want my daughter to be a floozy. And then, they'll blame Sexy Red for having a rap song, or Cardi B, Megan Thee Stallion, for having a rap song, but they won't blame the people in their community who owns Bang Bros, who owns X Videos, who owns Cornhub, who owns Vivid. I'm just asking, who owns OnlyFans, Camster, Hamster X? Who owns all of these platforms? So if they own all of the platforms, then whose culture is that, right? You're quick to define Black culture, but see, when they say white culture, it's very nebulous, and they try to make it seem like it's all just this, this beautified thing that, this flawless diamond. You can't find a flaw into it. But then when you start pointing things out, it's like, this really is your culture, but you just don't want to take ownership for it. You want us to take ownership for everything negative, and we have to. We take ownership for the negative things and the positive things. Every group has negative and positive, but for some reason, some people in the W community, they only want to glaze and praise things that they believe are positive. No, you guys have a lot of negative things in your culture. People will talk about Vikings. I'm a Viking. What is Viking culture? Viking culture is raping, pillaging, and plundering. So are you guys okay with, RAPE culture? I mean, if you are, just say that. Vikings were going around stealing people's stuff. So all of the whole Law and Order people, and then they say, I'm a Viking. We was Vikings and shit, right? Okay, you think you're Ragnar Lothbrok, right? Or Ivar the Boneless, right? That's who you think you are. Fine. So that means you're immersed and entrenched in Viking culture. Viking culture was about thievery, pillage, and plundering. Oh, look at this country over there. They have more than we have. So instead of trying to negotiate it, we're bigger than them and I think we can fight better. Let's go over there and be these murderous mayhem maniacs. I mean, that's what the culture is that you're celebrating. And that's okay. It's within your rights to celebrate it. Just call it for what it is. Stop acting like, everything you're celebrating is just based on culture and preservation of some sort of morality. No, a lot of stuff you're praising comes from immoral and really actually evil type culture. But let's get into this video. I played some of the Fox News. So now we're going to get into Democracy Now! This is the Minnesota lawyer who defends the protest. And I have my qualms about it because, of course, they had to get this black chick who knows where she came from. I did a little bit of research and it looks like she's clicked in with the NAACP. Any person that's clicked in with the NAACP is clicked in with the DNC, i.e. the Democratic establishment. So this is Democratic Shillery 101. Find a black face, preferably a black woman, or if it's a black dude, make sure that he's obese or homosexual, right? Both, they'll take that. Find the black woman and put her and have her crash out for issues. They don't have them do these political stunts for anything that will uplift the black community, but it will crash out for everyone. And it's supposed to be a rising tide lifts all boats. Injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere. So therefore, black people have to be the political crash test dummies right at the forefront to take all the bullets, the criticism. And then when they pass some sort of legislation, dole out some sort of reparative justice in the form of monetary compensation, black people don't get anything. And if they do, it's just going to be the few corporate stooges that they pass out some crumbs to in comparison to what the others are getting. But let's get into the video.
Minneapolis as the city endures its third week of occupation by a force of over 3,000 federal immigration agents accused of violating human and civil rights and of fatally shooting resident Renee Good. Border Patrol Commander Greg Bovino defended the agents' actions Tuesday as, quote, legal, ethical, and moral, unquote. As protests continue, calling for ICE out for good, a play on Renee Good's name, Vice President J.D. Vance will travel to Minneapolis Thursday. This comes as the Justice Department served grand jury subpoenas on several top Democratic officials, including Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, and Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, accusing them of obstructing federal law enforcement activities in the state. Attorney General Ellison said in a statement Tuesday, quote, everything about this is highly irregular, especially the fact that this comes shortly after my office sued the Trump administration to challenge their illegal actions within Minnesota, he said. Also on Tuesday, Attorney General Pam Bondi said the Justice Department is investigating demonstrators who disrupted Sunday services at a church in St. Paul to protest one of the church's pastors, David Easterwood, who was reportedly a top ICE official in the Twin Cities.
And shout out to Tutneys. They'll erroneously tell us reparations is racial. Bro, this live should have thousands. Your perspective is spot on. Well, unfortunately, someone had told me my channel was shadow banned. I don't even know how I got shadow banned. I don't even got 1,000 subs yet. I'm not even monetized. I'm only doing this because I think the truth needs to be out there, and I really do. I'm a man of the people. I love the people and I rock with the people. But yes, reparations is not racial. It's lineage / status based. It's simultaneous lineage status based. So right now, Native Americans, there's no race called Native American. There's no race called indigenous, right? The people that are getting the benefits, whatever tribal benefits that they get, and you can look it up and see what they're getting. And not even all tribes are getting that, but I'm talking about the ones who are getting it. The reason that they're getting tribal benefits is there's no race called Seminole or Choctaw or Cherokee and Navajo, right? So what their benefits, their compensation, what they're getting is not race based, it's lineage and status based. We have a similar lineage status based claim. They just keep trying to frame it in a race based frame to try to shoot it down and say that it was affirmative action, DEI, etc. Even if it was race based, they never shot down racial based stuff. And one of the biggest ones was Homestead Act. They were giving millions upon millions of free acres to poor white immigrants, right? The same people that they would be saying is a bane to the society. Well, they had a bunch of people over there who were failing in their homeland, always say fleeing filth, famine, feudalism, feudalism and failure. That's what they were fleeing. They didn't stay over there and fight to make it pop. They came over here. They saw, oh, there's this other group. They getting it popping over there. They're fighting. They're kind of being subjugated. If we go over there, we might be treated badly, but we ain't gonna be treated like them. And that's really what it was. All of these people that love their homeland so much, but they didn't stay there to fight. Then when they came over here, they didn't go back to fight for anything. The only thing they tried to do was make money over here and then go back to their homeland to live like a king, but not change the conditions that forced them to flee. I mean, that's pretty cowardly to me. You come over here, call a group lazy. We're lazy, but we stayed in our homeland and fought. You were in your homeland and said, I couldn't cut it. They say if you can't stand the heat, get the F out the kitchen. Well, we said, nah, we gonna extinguish the flames and stay in this kitchen. Y'all got the F out of the kitchen. Y'all grabbed your bags and ran and said, everything is too hot for me. I can't take. It's too hot. You couldn't take it. You had to get up out of there. Well, we said, you know what? We're going to extinguish these flames. It ain't too hot for us. Like Lil Wayne said, I'm in Hell's Kitchen with an apron and a hairnet. We cooking. We in Hell's Kitchen, and you know what I mean? Hey, it feels like home to us. Unfortunately, you know what I mean? But we use that energy, we use that resilience to create the culture that has been so globalized, to have the spirit that everyone wants to imitate and emulate, while at the same time ridicule and undermine. But let's get back into the video.
Renee good. Renee good. Renee good. Renee good. Renee.
Among those joining the protests were Black Lives Matter Minnesota co-founder Monique Cullors and longtime civil rights leader and ordained Reverend Nekima Levy Armstrong.
David Easterwood is a pastor here. He is also the director of the field office for ICE in St. Paul. So someone who claims.
And this is what I've been saying, because both parties support open borders. Y'all heard all of the rhetoric that Trump was saying, and people get excited about the rhetoric. Yeah, Trump getting y'all out of here. He gonna deport y'all. And then you look at the numbers like, actually, he's not. And all of the people that act like they're against Trump, remember, this is what they voted for. The people voted for deportation, so they agree with the deportations. They just want them to be more sanitized, like Obama. Obama comes, wears a suit, says that he listens to Jay-Z, and then he deports. He getting Jorge out of here. He getting Julio out of here. But he comes in and he's like, here, let me have a drink of horchata with you. And they're like, yeah, we really love Obama. Obama was more slick and sly, and he did more deportations. They're not calling Trump the deporter in chief. They'll call him a fascist and all sorts of other names, but they're not calling him that. They say, depend on what number you look at, the lowest end 5 to 10 million, highest end 30 to 50 million illegal, undocumented aliens in here, whatever you want to phrase them and title them as, right? So Trump is only responsible for a few 100,000 deportations. They try to allege some people are self-deporting, but there's no really clear evidence of that. That's a drop in the bucket. It's a drop in the ocean compared to the numbers. So all they're trying to do is do a lot of political theater to make it appear as if he's more effective than he actually is. Like Roger says, Obama was strategic and surgical. Trump is just a bumbling, stumbling buffoon bull in a china shop breaking everything. But many of his base, because they feed off of this sensationalism, they get excited and almost kind of get a boner off him talking bad about black people or immigrants and stuff. And then when you look at the numbers and say, oh, you voted for mass deportations, that's not what's going on. The people who they donated hundreds of millions to his campaign. Remember, he was walking back and saying that we need like 600,000 Chinese students and that certain sectors are going to be protected. He started walking it back. First, it was get them all out of here. We got to protect American jobs and white people are being discriminated against. So then now he's switched on to, yeah, man, we do need immigrants in certain sectors because Americans are too stupid. Okay, so if Americans are too stupid, wouldn't America first be investing in education, infrastructure, and policy that makes Americans not stupid? Instead, he calls Americans stupid and said we got to bring in people from other countries. Okay, that's fine if we have legal strategic immigration, but still, you called Americans stupid. What are you doing to address that? Instead, they're trying to gut the Department of Education and all this stuff. I get it, right? They want to talk about this Doge. They didn't really save any money. Another drop in the ocean, a teardrop in the ocean. That's what they saved. Okay, fine. What is Trump's plan for education? Instead, he wants you to learn from a bunch of Zionists and Jewish supremacists and PragerU telling you that slavery wasn't that bad. They'll tell you slavery wasn't that bad, but they won't tell you the Holocaust wasn't that bad. Look at how long the slavery was. Look at how long the Holocaust was. And by definition, we went through our own American Holocaust. They just try to reserve it for a specific demographic. We went through our American Holocaust. They went through a Nazi Holocaust. Look which one lasted longer. And then look which one they tell you to never forget. This one happened a little over a decade. This one happened for hundreds and hundreds of years. Forget what happened hundreds of years. Never forget what happened over a decade. Okay? Make it make sense for me.
To worship God, teaching people in this church about God, is out there overseeing ICE agents.
Now, federal officials claim the church protest is a potential violation of the FACE Act. That's the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act, which is usually...
And shout out to Tednese. I think this is a powerful comment, and I would say I sincerely appreciate this. This is a heartfelt comment. Where have you been all the years, bro? I've been waiting for this perspective narrative to have a mic. Wow. Well, you know what? I've just been trying to fall back. I've been in, laying back. I tried to allow people to take charge, take lead. And I was trying to do my leadership thing behind the scenes, but we're at a critical junction right now. It's a red alert. Break glass if emergency. Well, it's the emergency now. The state of America, the state of my community specifically, which is the foundational Black American community. I'm a humanitarian, so I believe in uplifting, enriching people, not only nationally, globally. It's an emergency, right? So we have to have people that are willing to speak truth to power. I know that's a cliche saying, but I'm not monetized. I'm not funded. I would like to get monetized one day, for the heavy game that I'm dropping. Not only that, I have to get it out the mud, because once you have these perspectives, these corporate shills and the Zios, the big wigs, the oligarchs, the plutocrats, they ain't gonna hire you. They ain't gonna try to break nobody like me off with a bag. No one that has my perspective. They want the bought and paid for, buck broken, bozo, bimbos, and babblers. That's what they want. That's not gonna be me. So I sincerely appreciate this. This does mean a lot. So let's get back into the video.
Used to protect entrances to abortion clinics. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem told Newsmax arrests may be coming soon.
And that pastor really did a remarkable thing there, trying to protect his parishioners.
And even the parishioners, I imagine, have felt and feel intimidated. And
they did. And there's going to be arrests in the next several hours, Greta. There will be arrests tied to that.
David Easterwood's church issued a statement that, quote, invading a church service to disrupt the worship of Jesus or any other act of worship is protected by neither the Christian scriptures.
This is funny. The Black Lives MAGA. No, it should be Black lives should be independent. Every person should be independent. I don't really know why people just allow these parties. And, you know, they talk about the Crips and Bloods, but I mean, what is a more bigger, effective, and powerful gang? Crips and Bloods or the Republicans and Democrats? They're framed as no, they're not a gang. They're much more violent. They're much more corrupt. You know, the Crips that do a crime, they get locked up. A lot of the Crips are just kind of symbolic Crips, like, you know, they got the tattoos, they flying, you know, but there's not just like bodies dropping left and right like the 80s and 90s. However, the Democrats and the Republicans, when they sign for something, they're getting people slaughtered in countries, Libya, Afghanistan. You just in Afghanistan, you can take the Crips and Bloods, all of the crimes that they did combined for the last 20, 30 years, and it wouldn't even amount to even close to the mayhem and bloodshed that they did in Afghanistan. That was the gang leaders of the Republicans and the Democrats. So when it says Black Lives MAGA doesn't give a flying flip about black people. Neither party does. Both parties hate us. It's just if you were dealing with hatred, it is better in my you know, the way I see it, is better to have them be outright and overt with their hatred. Democrats are covert with their hatred. Republicans call you a nigga or a nigger to your face, and Democrats do the same thing with the Republicans. They just do it behind your back. And they'll say, I see you. Look at this George Floyd shirt. You know what I mean? Oh, matter of fact, look, I just bought some kente cloth the other day. And then you go home, you're like, oh, wow, they really see us. They really like me. And then the Democrats say, those dumb niggers, just like that one president. I can't remember his name, so I don't want to mix it up. But he said, yeah, I'm going to have those niggers voting Democrat for 60 years. So even people that say, look, we're trying to help you, and even if they do something that might appear to help you, they still see you as not a nigga, a nigger, meaning less than. And I say, just say it with your chest. Stop pretending as if you really rock with us. And we, you know, it's just you guys are acting like victims, but behind the scene, you're working to undermine us. You're working to victimize us and then calling us a victim while you're victimizing us. It's almost like someone that slipped a roofie in your drink. You know that they're forcibly penetrating you and do stuff. You complain about it and say, stop acting like a victim. It's like, well, stop victimizing me. You know what I mean? I won't have anything to complain about or point to, but they don't want to stop doing that. So then the complaints won't stop. How about that?
Nor the laws of this nation, unquote. Meanwhile, activists again gathered Tuesday to call for the pastor's resignation due to his possible connection to ICE. For more, we're joined by Nakima Levy-Armstrong, Minneapolis-based civil rights attorney.
So here's already the issue right here. BLM was nothing more than a Democratic shield organization. And what they did was they put a few black women, some of them being lesbian, as the head. And somehow Black Lives Matter speaks for the entire black community. When they had the Stop Asian Hate campaign and they donated hundreds of millions of dollars to them, no one asks what that money went to. It's just like, oh, well, they're Asians and they have a high IQ, so they'll figure it out. Ask Chinese people if they think they have the same IQ as a Filipino person. Ask a Korean if they think that they have the same IQ as a Cambodian person. Ask a Japanese person, do they think that they have the same IQ as a person from Thailand? They're all Asian, right? So nobody is asking what Asian group did that go to stop Asian hate? What Asian hate? Hate against all Asians, hate against Chinese people? Because when they were saying Kung flu, they're specifically calling it the China virus, not the Japan virus. They didn't call it the Filipino virus. So where was all of this Asian hate, and where did those hundreds of millions go to? No one asked. But BLM, they'll say it was funded by George Soros. So that means George Soros was the one, he was the ringleader. Instead of blaming George Soros, they say George Soros funded it. Okay, back to attacking black people. George Soros did this, who's not black, back to attacking black people. Attack the entire black community for something that you say a white Jewish dude funded. So instead of attacking them or saying it's the Jews, they're saying, oh, yep, it's the black people. Even though it was only 4 or 5 black women, and they got the crumbs. They raised hundreds of millions of dollars. A bunch of white people, corporations, they got paid off the back of George Floyd. But you blame black people who didn't get anything from that. And funny though, when they talk about BLM, they only want to look at these figureheads and say BLM stands for buying large mansions. Okay, fine. Call out them chicks who bought the large mansions, but they weren't the only ones. Why you only calling out the black ones? All corruption matters, right? So call out everybody. Why don't they call out the non-black people who is corrupt? If it was George Soros funding these 4 black people, clearly he was funding everybody else. They said he was funding these protests. Okay, so they don't say the black women or the black community was funding the protests. They say George Soros and some non-black entities. But suddenly the black community has to answer for it. Some working class person who didn't even go to a BLM protest has to answer for what you guys saying a non-black entity is funding. Where's the accountability in that? The black community needs to take accountability for the stuff that my community funded. Does that make any sense to you? But let's get into the video. And of course, I got to give a shout out to the lovely, sincere Saida in the building.
Founder of the Racial Justice Network. Yes, she's also an ordained reverend and a preacher. We welcome you back to Democracy Now! You're joining us today from an undisclosed location. If you can explain what happened on Sunday, a protest that you were a part of.
Yes. So, Amy, 4 Black women activists and organizers planned Sunday's protest, and I was one of the 4. And we are unapologetic about going into the church. We participated in the first part of the service, and the pastor prayed during the service, "Dear God, please chasten us and help us to get our house in."
And I got to address this to Paul, whatever your name is. And you saying the Diddycrats with the thumbs down. Now, both parties are the same. So when you say the Diddycrats, I'm assuming that you're trying to talk about some sort of homosexual, erotic activity going on. But when you look at the leaders on the right wing, there's a lot of accusations of them when they go into these CPAC and Turning Point USA. A lot of them are fondling and getting fondled with by other boys, i.e. Nick Fuentes. There's viral videos right now. Like this ain't years ago, right now. He went to the club with a bunch of stooges, Andrew Tate, Myron Lane, and all of these other people. There's a chick trying to get Nick's attention, patting him on the shoulder. Some chick wants to, hey, shoot her shot. He didn't even have to shoot his shot. A chick wants to shoot her shot at Nick, and he's over here looking at his phone, and he's saying, oh man, I didn't see her. The other dude is like, hey bro, I'm gonna bring some girls over here, man. Is it cool? Nick Fuentes, nah, I'm good. So Nick Fuentes, who is a closet homo, a closet Diddycrat, he's really the leader on the right now. Another bigoted dude, Benny Johnson, Milo Yiannopoulos. He hates black people, but he was out with his gay stuff. Then he said he's not gay anymore. Then he said, hey, look, Benny Johnson and all these other people, yeah, he for sure knows that they are gay. So when you say Diddycrat, who are you really talking about? Because there's a lot of dudes on the right. If that's your thing, that's your thing. This is not to bash gay people. But sometimes many of the people that hate gay people, they hate trans people. Then you find out it's like, bro, you was letting a trans person hit it from the bike. If that's what you like, fine. But just stop playing. All the people that be like, Diddy had bottles of baby oil. It's like, you sound like you were at that party, bro, because why else would you care? If Diddy likes man butt, like, how does that affect you? But when people are using terms like this, I get it, right? It's funny, it's insulting, it's to kind of ridicule people, but like, bruh, like, let's be honest, a lot of people on the right, they like man butt. So who is really the Diddycrats? The Diddycrats and the Republic Diddycrats? Because they doing the same thing. Bending over, spreading cheeks. Let's get into it.
Order. So when he was done praying, I stood up and I said, excuse me, Pastor, you just prayed this particular prayer. And he said, correct. And I said, well, help me understand, how is David Easterwood a pastor here and also a director of ICE?
Oh, it looks like we've been joined by another illustrious guest. I gotta hit you.
Oh, damn! Dr. Press, wait a minute. I know you. Wait a minute.
None other than my boo. What it do, coming through, showing some love in building. Salute to you from coming through. Appreciate it.
In St. Paul, as soon as I mentioned David Easterwood's name, the pastor yells out, shame, shame, over the microphone. It was clear that he didn't want to engage me in discussion about this in front of the congregation, because he didn't want people in the congregation to know about this conflict of interest that David Easterwood has. I mean, how can you serve as a pastor of the gospel of Jesus Christ while overseeing the brutal conduct of ICE agents who are literally terrorizing communities in the Twin Cities of Minnesota?
So can you respond now to Pam Bondi saying that the protesters, presumably including you, will be arrested? She said this yesterday, but she said it would be within hours. And talk about more about your decision to go into the church.
I can't speak to Pam Bondi and the federal government's decision to investigate those of us who were involved in the protest. There were probably around 24 or so people. I can't speak to their decision making, because these are the same individuals who have firmly decided that they will not investigate ICE agents.
And this is the Democratic playbook. They get some black people, specifically black women. They'll say you're the backbone of the party. Get out there and fight for issues that help everyone else. Issues that help your group specifically, we can't advocate for those because those are unpopular. But then they'll advocate for trans people in sports and trans bathrooms. Those are unpopular, but they say, hey, trans lives matter, so we should advocate for it. I say, hey, look, if that's the issue that you strongly believe in, they should advocate for it. If it's unpopular, they still should advocate for it. And if we live in a democracy, which, which one are we supposed to? Is this a republic or democracy? Being rhetorical with that, right? But if we live in a democracy, even if someone has an unpopular opinion that you don't like, and people want to democratically elect an official or democratically choose some sort of ballot initiative, then you just got to deal, you got to deal with the will of the people.
And Jonathan Ross for the killing of Renee Good. I mean, if that's not hypocrisy, I'm not sure what is. How do you investigate and threaten to arrest nonviolent, peaceful protesters who are literally coming into a church to raise questions about this conflict of interest for this pastor? I mean, where is the separation of church and state? And if they're so
So this shows you that this is a Democratic shield organization. From one, BLM doesn't represent Black people, and they keep using BLM as a proxy for Black people. Don't take my word for it. When you look at the protests, it was overwhelmingly white people. A bunch of Black people knew that marching out in the streets wasn't going to change nothing. There is a time to protest, but we knew marching in the streets in this specific instance wasn't going, it just wasn't going to change anything. And what has changed after that? There was an even more or a similar barbaric type of police brutality incident, and it actually was some tethers and some Sambos who did it. And since it was some Black people, some Black cops who, once you become a cop, you're blue before you're Black, since they had unalived Tyree Nichols, that got swept under the rug. There has been countless police just going around doing heinous acts after George Floyd, and all of these other people say, we march with BLM. Okay, well, Black lives didn't stop mattering after that. And forget Black lives. This was about police brutality. Black lives was created under Obama because our deaths were just going unnoticed or being swept under the rug. Meanwhile, other groups were elevated to say, look, we have to care about this. And then we just said, hey, well, this is our current position. If y'all don't care about what happens to us, why should we care about what happens to y'all? Then they want to invoke all of our civil rights leaders and say that you're being divisive and all lives matter. Injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere. But y'all wasn't saying that. Y'all was saying that we were being too woke and we were complaining. So now we stopped being woke. We stopped complaining. And now y'all like, complain some more, be woke again, but only in our benefit. Like, this shit doesn't make any sense. And it's not reciprocal. We're out here crashing out for every group, being the political doormats. And what do we get in return? A pat on the back and not even a cookie. If you do get a cookie, it's half bitten. Like, who took a bite out of my cookie? Oh, we couldn't just give something to you, so we had to give something to minorities, marginalized groups, overlooked groups. But we were the ones at the brunt. Y'all was saying Black this, Black that, Black crime, 1350, Black this, Black fatherless homes, Black. And then, okay, fine. Let's rectify the problem with the big bad Black people. And then it turns into, well, we can't help Black people, even though we were demonizing Black people, even though we were blaming Black people. We have to help people of color. And then in the people of color spectrum, which is an idiotic and an offensive term, we're at the bottom of that. So it's just the status quo. Using terms like people of color is just the status quo. When it comes to minorities, we're at the bottom of that. Marginalized, bottom of that. Overlooked, bottom of that. Because they're always going to say, well, this group is overlooked too. Yeah, your group was lynched, redlined, had to deal with sharecropping, debt peonage. But this dude, he was grew up with a silver spoon, but now he's trans, and trans people, they face a lot of discrimination. So that's kind of like the discrimination you and your family face. That's kind of like sharecropping and debt peonage, right? Even though they have a choice, it's the same. All oppression matters. It turns into that, and they always got to use a Black face, Black plight to do it. But this specific iteration of air quote black activism. This is all bought and paid for by the DNC. And that's what the DNC, they want us out there to be the crash test dummies so everyone else could benefit. And of course, the figureheads, the puppets and tokens, they'll benefit. But the collective community who faces all the backlash, we don't benefit like at all.
Concerned about what happens inside of churches, then why did Donald Trump roll back protections for churches when it comes to ICE? As a matter of fact, ICE agents can go into churches with the warrant and they can take people out and detain them. There have been cases of ICE agents waiting in parking lots to apprehend people as they are going in or coming out of church services. So clearly the Trump administration could care less about the sanctity of a church. I, however, as an ordained reverend, do care. I believe that if someone professes to represent the gospel of Jesus Christ and to preach it, that they should not be allowing ICE agents to drag people out of their homes, cut women out of seat belts in their cars and drag them out, bust down doors, bust out car windows, bring people out half naked in the freezing cold to detain them, taking trophy pictures with Black men and others that they've apprehended in their homes, scaring children, tear gassing children and families, almost killing a 6-month-old through the use of high-powered military-grade weapons such as flashbang grenades and very strong tear gas. I mean, these are real things that we're dealing with here in the state of Minnesota. It's delusional to pretend that these things aren't happening. It's delusional to pretend that there is a significant problem with David Easterwood serving as a pastor and as the overseer of ICE and defending their conduct, minimizing their conduct. So why are people who are raising their voices on behalf of...
So everything that they're claiming, ICE is an enforcement arm. This is the whole issue that we were fighting for, ending qualified immunity, fighting to end the police brutality. This is why people were so mad about defunding the police. ICE is a form of police. What is it? I think they were part of INS and then they kind of ICE formed under Bush, but or just the immigration police, and they're saying, well, they don't have this authorization and everything. Well, they have the authorization of the president. They like to say that the US president is the leader of the free world, where the leader said that they're authorized. So challenge him legally, since this is a nation of laws, challenge him legally. All the stuff that Trump is doing, the Democrats could have done. It's just up to their discretion if they want to do it. We can talk about it's immoral, but it's immoral to be drone striking people. And we do that all the time. It's just if we don't see it, then it's not immoral. No, the whole government, capitalism is immoral. But if somebody is making good money, they don't think about the immorality of it. Then they start to subscribe to the pull yourself up by your bootstrap theory, even though that's not what they did. They say, well, I worked hard. Yeah, but you didn't pull yourself up by your bootstrap. So you're telling people to do something that you didn't even do. And then they start making excuses for why they didn't have to pull themselves up by their bootstrap, which is fine. You don't have to make excuses for that. But it's extremely rich to tell someone to do what you didn't do and what you couldn't do. Because that's the whole complaint right now. That's why they're saying white men are being attacked and being discriminated against for jobs and schools and all this stuff. But no one asks them, okay, cool, who's discriminating against them? It ain't George Floyd. He's not here, right? It's not some poor thug from Oakland or Chicago or St. Louis. It's not some LGBT pastor who is discriminating against you. It would be the people who are most in power. So if someone who looks like you, who is discriminating against you, subjugating you, who you saying are hiring DEI hires and H-1Bs over you, is someone that looks like you. Instead, you're blaming someone who doesn't look like you. I call that intellectual cowardice.
Of the vulnerable, on behalf of the poor, in the name of Jesus Christ, the ones being persecuted. It is absolutely an abomination what is happening right now. And I'm continuing to stand 10 toes down for my community and in speaking the truth and in demanding justice and accountability. An ICE agent should not be able to kill someone with impunity, but that is exactly what we see happening with the murder of Renee Good. So we will continue.
Here we go again. We've been saying this over and over and over, that police, and ICE is just immigration police. That's just the simplest way that you can say it, right? We've been saying that, you know, when they say no one man should have all that power. Well, no organization or institution should have all that power. When people talk about like that they're against big government, but then they're also don't want to defund the police, they want to refund the police, then that means that you're for big government. The police and all of these enforcement arms are governmental bodies. So how could you say that you're against big government, but you are for bloated spending for the cops? Y'all know the saying, you can't throw money at the problem. Somehow with ICE, yeah, we have to throw money at the problem. But they threw more money at the problem than Obama did, but somehow Obama deported more than Trump by several millions of miles. Like, what are we talking about here? Cops every year. Crime is an issue. Crime is an issue. Give us more money. You can't throw money at the problem unless it's the police. Throw money at the problem. Crime is an issue. Okay, now you got tanks, drones, dogs, all sorts of militarized vehicles. Okay, yeah, but crime is still an issue. Okay, we'll give you more money. Are you stopping crime? We tried to stop it. You gave us a bunch of more money, but we just need more money to solve the problem. Okay, what's that money going to go to? Don't ask us that. Just give us more money. You don't want to defund the police, do you? Back to blue no matter who. That's pretty much how it goes. And defund the police just means reallocate the funds. If the police budget is $5 billion, right? Out of that $5 billion, take $100 million in, targeted towards enrichment programs, things that's going to keep the youth out of the streets, things that's going to lead to gainful employment or provide gainful employment. That's just $100 million, which would be a drop in that police budget. It's not really defunding, it's reallocating. But what sounds a better slogan? Defund the police or reallocate the funds from the police into enrichment programs? I mean, which one is gonna sound more like a buzzword? Defund the police, reallocate the funds that are being misused by the police. So people are trying to hone in on the buzzwords, but yeah, if someone was not performing at their job, they wouldn't want them just defunded. They will want them fired. You don't have a job anymore. The police are allegedly failing based on them every year's with their job. Crime is out of control. How's it keep being out of control? Like, are you guys not solving or stopping anything? Yeah, we are. It's just out of control. And then when you look at the numbers are on a steady decline. Yeah, it's on a decline, but this is on an increase. So it's out of control. Okay, cool. How could you stop it? By more money. Here's more money. Did you stop it? No, it's out of control. It just stays out of control. And they stay begging with their hands out. But they tell you, can't throw money at the problem.
Continue to center these issues. We will not be gaslit by the federal government continuing to weaponize their investigative powers against those with whom they disagree. Even our governor, our mayor, the Hennepin County Attorney's Office, there are so many people that they've decided to investigate other than the wrongdoers. And I think that that's unconscionable. It's disgusting. It's despicable. And it's antithetical to democratic values in our democracy.
Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon has also said the ex-CNN journalist.
Okay, so I think that's enough of that video. I think y'all got both perspectives. So now I'm going to get into the debate. And this debate is going to be from a channel called Breaking Points. And that channel is run by Krystal and Saagar. Krystal is supposedly on the lefty progressive side, and Saagar is a right-wing conservative MAGA type dude. So we're gonna get right into this video. Just give me uno momento. And thank you all who are viewing this concurrently and that will be watching this on the replay. You could be anywhere in the world. You chose to be here with me, at least momentarily. And for that, I thank you. So we're going to get straight into this debate. If you would like to watch it uninterrupted, you can go to the Breaking Points channel, and it's titled Krystal and Sagar Debate, Don Lemon, Anti-ICE Church Protests. All right, let's get into it.
The reasoning behind this was that they had found names of ICE officers and suspected that one of the pastors at this church was the leader of a local ICE field office. It did end up, by the way, that the pastor, who they allege was an ICE officer, was not even present there at the time. It set off a high-profile incident, now showdown with the Trump administration. Don Lemon, the current YouTube streamer, I guess a disgraced ex-CNN anchor, was actually present at the protest, which has heightened some of the discussion around this. So we're going to
okay, so let me make the correction. Roger says Saagar is not MAGA. I don't like him. I don't care if he's MAGA or not. The dude is an anti-black. I don't know. Is he Indian, Punjabi, Hindu? Do you know any of that? Let me know, Roger. But yeah, the dude thinks he's the dude really does think he's white.
show you some of the clips that has happened. We're going to discuss it on the other side. Let's take a listen.
So you can see the protesters here have gathered over here. They're in the middle of the church. So in the beginning of the church service, the pastor was speaking, and Nikema stood up and said her piece, and then the protesters surrounded her. But this is a clandestine mission. I think they found out one of, according to them, this is according to Operation Pull-Up, that one of the pastors here is a member of ICE. And so here we go.
And we were interrupted by this group of protesters. Yeah. We asked them to leave, and they obviously have not left. Yeah. So,
what do you think of this?
I mean, this is unacceptable. It's shameful. It's shameful to interrupt a public gathering of Christians in worship. So,
but there were folks who will.
I have to take care of my flock.
Okay, but listen, we live in there's a constitution in the First Amendment to freedom of speech and freedom to assemble and protest.
Yeah. We're here to worship. We're here to worship Jesus, because that's the hope of these cities. That's the hope of the world, is Jesus Christ.
I want to be very respectful. Please don't push me, though.
We're here to worship Jesus. Yes. That's why we're here.
I'll tell you is that there are varying arrays of views on the political situation here. That's what I'll tell you.
What do you mean by that?
I'm going to leave it at that. But there's varying array of views in this church on politics of immigration. Right. Recognize the complexity of the issue.
Yeah. Some people don't like what's happening. Some people like it.
I'm not going to reduce it to that. I won't reduce it that simply, but acknowledge the complexity of the situation.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you talking. By the way, just so you know, this is what you get with independent journalism that you will not get with corporate media. I'm just here to tell you. So if you're in the chat, if you're with us, support us. Support us. Support us. Like and subscribe. Become a member. Support independent journalism.
Wanted to go on vacation for the summer and needed like $1,000, randomly came across this website.
So there's Don in the church asking for people to like and subscribe after accompanying these activists, where he appeared to have had some foreknowledge. This is relevant, by the way, whenever we'll get to some of the charges that may be levied against him with the Trump administration. Of all of these protesters who decide, because they suspect, again, they did not even have it confirmed. It's been confirmed now later that a pastor who was not there is capable, was potentially a leader of the local ICE office, that they decide to come in to disrupt this service, to harass, intimidate, and scream at, including, by the way, women and children. And if anybody's wondering, it was a multiracial congregation. I don't know, Krystal. I mean, looking at this, like, I think that the spirit of BLM is alive and well. It's very clear, specifically because it's also a BLM group that was behind this protest. And I've actually been frustrated that everybody's talking about
And just to be clear, Sagar hates black people and specifically he hates BLM. But above that, he hates weed. For some reason, this dude just like literally hates weed. He doesn't go in about, he'll talk about drugs in general, but he has a specific hatred for weed. Like he hates weed more than fentanyl, heroin, and all this other type of stuff. But this is a reoccurring theme. Of course, he wants to frame this as blaming BLM. And this is the whole issue with people because BLM is a buzzword. So if somebody was a BLM activist, they keep harkening back to 2020, right? Remind me what year it is again? Am I mistaken, or is it 2026? So they try to say, oh, get over the past. Why are you talking about old stuff? But they just keep going back to 2020 and they keep going to BLM. Now, if someone goes forward, someone that was a part of the BLM organization, if they go forward and they do some sort of activism that has nothing to do with Black Lives Matter, they still frame it as BLM because they want you to be thinking about black people and blaming black people as the proxy versus what are they actually protesting? Because we already talked about who's funding BLM. It's almost like talking about Amazon. Yeah, man, Amazon is behind this. No, that you mean Jeff Bezos is behind this, right? Because he's the brainchild in the operations of this. So when they say BLM, then they know who's funding it. They love to say it's George Soros, Act Blue, DNC. So the DNC is behind that, but they won't say, oh, this is another DNC thing, or this is another George Soros thing. They want you to focus on BLM, who is the lowest people on the totem pole in terms of this, right? They're being puppeteered to do this. They're being paid, and it's not the entire community. It's a handful of black people. Most of the people are non-black, but they keep getting all of the black people in 4K. BLM, black, black, black. They keep saying black is in a predominantly white city. They went to a predominantly white church. The protesters were predominantly white, but oh yeah, but the leader was black. Yeah, the leader who was funded by who? Not by black people, but now they don't care about who's funding them. They always talk about AIPAC and J Street and BlackRock, and suddenly you want to care who's funding the politicians. But when it comes to BLM, they don't care who's funding it. They'll say the black community is low IQ, unorganized, and broke. But somehow we have billions or hundreds of millions of dollars to fund these elaborate protests all across the country. They don't believe that. So then they admit that, no, that's not what we believe. We believe that it was someone in our community funding it. But we're not going to blame our community. We're going to blame the mascots and figureheads. How cowardly is that?
Some of the charges that may be levied against him with the Trump administration of all of these protesters who decide because they suspect, again, they did not even have it confirmed. It's been confirmed now later that a pastor who was not there was potentially a leader of the local ICE office, that they decide to come in to disrupt this service, to harass, intimidate, and scream at, including, by the way, women and children. And if anybody's wondering, it was a multiracial congregation. I don't know, Krystal. I mean, looking at this, like, I think that the spirit of BLM is alive and well. It's very clear, specifically because it's also a BLM.
And see, it's funny. He'll say it was a multiracial congregation. So when something is majority black, they go out of their way to say, oh yeah, this was a majority black congregation or a majority black city or black this or black culture, right? But Minneapolis, which is overwhelmingly white, in a city that's overwhelmingly white, in a congregation that's overwhelmingly white, and then because there were a few people that were non-white and may have a sprinkle of melanin, then he's saying it was multiracial. And then some of the people in there were like white Hispanics, and they're saying multiracial. No, it was just a white Hispanic in there. Oh, there were Jewish people in there. Yeah, it was a white Jewish person in there. So they're trying to frame that as multiracial. You can say multi-ethnic. That would, lend more credibility to what you're saying. But him saying multiracial is kind of a misrepresentation. It was mostly white, which they have no issue saying in any other case, right? They're saying mostly whites are under attack. Mostly whites is this, and we need mostly white babies, and we need to be the most in the country. They have no issue saying mostly white any other time. But here he wants to frame this as a multiracial. And it's funny because the dudes on his side are always against diversity. So why is he even talking about race at all? I thought these people said talking about race was woke, but he wants to interject race talk. And he didn't have to add that, saying it was a multiracial congregation. No one asked for that. So why is he bringing up race and adding that context? But when you bring up race, it's like, stop talking about race, bro. It's woke. Why are you making it about race? Well, he made it about race, saying it was multiracial. But we'll see this reoccurring theme throughout this, and you'll see the hypocrisy of people like Sagar Unjeti.
Against him with the Trump administration, of all of these protesters who decide because they suspect, again, they did not even have it confirmed. It's been confirmed now later that a pastor who was not there is capable, was potentially a leader of the local ICE office, that they decide to come in to disrupt this service, to harass, intimidate, and scream at, including, by the way, women and children. And if anybody's wondering, it was a multiracial congregation. I don't know, Krystal. I mean, looking at this, like, I think that the spirit of BLM is alive and well. It's very clear, specifically because it's also a BLM group that was behind this protest. And I've actually been frustrated that everybody's talking about Don Lemon and not about the actions of these protesters themselves, and then the reaction from Democratic lawmakers. So you had the Minnesota State Attorney General defend this protest action, and he said, oh, well, people will have to feel uncomfortable. So he doesn't see anything unlawful here. He actually doesn't think it's a violation of the FACE Act. You had the state Governor Walz of Minnesota put out some mealy-mouthed statement. And it's like, this just seems intrinsic to me. And I remember in our debate, people got mad because I talked about liberal protest norms. This is liberal protest. Like, they seem to believe it is okay. And again, this is a violation actually of federal law, at least clear cut to me, whenever you have the FACE Act, which was written in 1994, specifically says you can't intimidate and go in and disrupt religious worship services. It is unbelievable to me, like, that there is no general consensus and effectively just silence, in the same way that you see many right-wingers be silent on, let's say, the excesses of ICE, to what is something which is so egregious in its form of protest, and it seems completely normalized and permissed, like in the liberal establishment within the state of Minnesota. And the fact that the Attorney General immediately dismissed it, the local police literally doing nothing whenever these people, and again, let's be clear, screaming, making children cry, following them to their cars, intimidation, direct trespass, not leaving whenever they want. I truly do not understand how can this cannot be, like, actually condemned, especially when this already happened in 2020 and there was a massive back.
Here he goes with the whiny victim talk. How could this not be condemned? You're literally condemning it now on a platform that has millions of subscribers. A bunch of MAGA maniacs and people on the woke, wacky, weird right, they are condemning it. They're condemning it for different reasons. They're condemning it on partisan lines, but people are condemning it. And I hate when people do that. Excuse me. They always say, why isn't no one talking about this while you're currently talking about it? Why isn't no one condemning it? You're condemning it. Are you considering yourself no one? He wants everyone to be so emotionally unhinged. And these are the people trying to talk about impulse control. He's getting unhinged over these protests in the city that he's nowhere even close to. So, yeah, people are condemning it and talking about it and debating it. Not everyone is going to condemn what you want them to. There's a lot of stuff that he should condemn that he doesn't. So when it's something that he finds worthy of condemnation, he starts whining and acting like he's a victim, that he has to witness this or scroll through and read a feed about it. But when it's something to protect his buddies who are usually very bigoted, he like kind of dances around the subject and makes it seem like, oh, you're making a bigger deal about it than nobody is really tripping off Don Lemon and what he did like that. They're making a bigger story out of it and trying to manufacture consent and say that you should be outraged. How does Don Lemon's political chicanery, how does that change anything in your life right now? And right now, if you get on a podcast and start railing and condemning Don Lemon, does that hold him accountable? Does that change anything? You think that you making a podcast condemning him, that what, Don Lemon is no longer a millionaire? He's no longer going to get invited onto these legacy media outlets. So this dude is just kind of like not only preaching to the choir, he's whining to the choir at a high pitched, whiny little weaselly voice.
Within the state of Minnesota, and the fact that the attorney general immediately dismissed it, the local police literally doing nothing whenever these people, and again, let's be clear, screaming, making children cry, following them to their cars, intimidation, direct trespass, not leaving whenever they want. I truly do not understand how can this cannot be like actually condemned, especially when this already happened in 2020 and there was a massive backlash against it. So I really actually want, like, I don't understand. And as somebody who swims in this world, like, what is happening here? Like, how is it that this is completely permissive? And it's just like, oh, our side is good, so they can do whatever they want. The Minnesota State Attorney General is making a big stink about political, political or non-prosecution or whatever in the Renee Good case. Immediately comes out and says that this is totally fine, especially in a state where you had a shooting very recently in church. Like, how could you possibly try to encourage this type of behavior? I just don't get it.
I wish somebody would have showed me this table sooner. I mean, look at this. $3,000 in monthly payments of just
So let's separate a few things out.
And that's why I don't want to talk about Don Lemon, because, I'll get to that.
But we do need to talk about Don Lemon, because that's what they're focused on. And the administration is threatening to charge him specifically with FACE Act and also with the KKK violation, which is insane.
And notice he said he doesn't want to talk about Don Lemon, even though the DOJ, Saagar is saying, let's make it about the protesters. But the DOJ is saying, let's make it about Don Lemon. And he doesn't want to talk about that. Because, Roger, I know you said he ain't MAGA, but he still does have Trump nuts in his mouth, firmly positioned in his mouth. So Saagar doesn't want to talk about the big issue. He acts like he's against big government in a police state. And here you have the government being petty and saying, we don't like the optics of what Don Lemon is doing. And he's on the other side. He's a political op. We gonna play politics and send our boys at you. The boys in blue, the bigger boys in blue, the whole muscle of the DOJ. And Saagar's like, no, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about protesters and blame BLM. Okay, fine. Who has more power, Donald Trump or BLM? And he wants to spend time talking about a few people in BLM, frame it as some sort of movement. When people were at that church, nobody was saying Black lives anything. They didn't even mention Black people. But he's framing it as the spirit of BLM is alive. What the hell does that mean? You mean the spirit of justice? So people get to just spout stuff out without actually defining it. Krystal Ball doesn't care. She doesn't really care about Black people. She's like, I would see her as like the white liberal that Malcolm X warned us about. Is she good on some issues? Yeah, some universal policies that are realistic and never going to pass. But if you ask her about specific racial targeted justice for groups, i.e. foundational Black American freedmen who were specifically targeted, she's against that. It will turn into some all lives matter, rising tide lifts all boats. But when it comes to other groups, she doesn't care, like, if Jewish people get reparations. She doesn't care if Japanese people. She doesn't care if immigrants who were undocumented, who said that they're scared to go out of their house. And then Gavin Newsom says, here, we're going to give y'all some money to supplement y'all since y'all so scared to go out the house. She doesn't care about that. But anything specifically for American freedmen, she would be against that. So I kind of take some of her progressivism and leftism with a grain of salt. It's all, a lot of it is performative because, you know, she's a very wealthy woman. So the status quo, whether it's Republican or Democrat in office, you know, she'll still be wearing these fancy jewels and, you know, having property, making millions of dollars.
So I watched a good bit. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I watched a good bit of his stream. And to be honest with you, it was genuinely good. Like it
in
was
what way?
like, I mean, we played a little bit of it here. He was tipped off by the protesters that they were going to do this action. Okay. As a journalist, and no doubt he has a perspective. That doesn't mean that he isn't a journalist, right? So as a journalist, he goes in, he documents what they're doing. As you saw, he spoke with the pastor, he spoke with parishioners. You know, he at times was asking them challenging questions, but he also asked those challenging questions of the protesters as well. So of course you come away with a sense of where Don Lemon is on the issue. But it was, for me, it was genuinely valuable to watch his stream and to hear from the parishioners themselves. Because if you do just come at this from either a right or a left perspective, then you're going to have a very flattened view of the human beings involved. But, you know, it actually gave me sort of more texture and more context to be able to think about whether this was a sound tactical approach. Hearing like that guy that we heard there who's like, listen, you know, to be honest with you, there's a lot of different political views in this church. There were other people there who said, you know, to be honest with you, like some of what the protesters are saying, like I kind of agree with. This to me is way out of line and it's, you know, too comforting. And I'm very upset about what they've done here. But to be honest with you, some of the things that they're saying might be things that
So some of the people in the church, they agreed with the protesters, what they were saying. They just thought it was wrong place, wrong time. Same thing with these deportations. Many of the people that are crying, they agree with the deportations. They just want it done in a more humane, cute, and cuddly way, right? Like instead of deporting them and calling them rapists and thugs, deport them, but whisper sweet nothings in their ear and read them a poem. Read them a bedtime story before you deport them and then get their ass out of here. That's what many people are saying. Y'all remember, I will vote for Donald Trump. This is what they voted for. This is what they wanted. Many Latinos are Border Patrol and ICE. They have no issue waking up, going to their job. They don't feel like they're selling their people out by deporting them. They're like, hey, y'all not like us. Get up out of here. I'm documented. You're undocumented. I'm legal. You're illegal. Get up out of here. They don't feel like there's just whole Latino brotherhood and they're going against the grain by deporting them. So many people, especially the people in the W community who are acting so bleeding hard. Oh my God. The Gestapo, ICE is just like Nazi Germany. And then you ask them, do you agree with deportations? Yes, but not like this. It's like, so you do want deportations. You know what I mean? It's just here. Deport them, you know, give them an avocado wrap and a pina colada and send them on their way. Adios, amigo.
Agree with. Sure. So, you know, in terms of as a journalistic endeavor, like I think you should like and subscribe. He's on the ground in Minneapolis. He is actually tracking what is going on here and giving you a window in that is not just caricaturish.
Well,
so the idea of charging him is truly insane. And we all know the reason why they are focusing on him, which I think is also worth saying as well. Because he's famous, because he's liberal, because he's hated. Yes, I think because he's Black and gay. All of that plays into it.
He's the first person to remind you he's Black and gay. Okay, it has nothing to do.
There is no doubt that is part of why.
So I want y'all to hold on to that, right? So Saagar said a lot of this vitriol and backlash that Don Lemon is facing, it's not because he's Black, it's not because he's gay, it's because he's a liberal. But it's a bunch of liberals doing this type of stuff and they're not facing this backlash. So he's saying that his race and his sexuality has no bearing on that. But it's funny, as soon as you look at the comments on many of these posts, they bring up his race and they bring up his sexuality that Saagar says it has nothing to do with. And Roger, I believe you're talking about Crystal Ball. 44 million net worth, which came from alimony from one of her two former husbands before Kyle Kalinske. Shouldn't her name be Krystal Kalinske instead of Krystal Ball? Why is it now? I mean, I know, I guess this is the more modern thing that, even Candace Owens, right? Candace Owens' last name isn't Owen, so why didn't she take her husband's last name? Her husband is her rock. She loves him so much, just not enough to take his last name. Krystal Kalinske is not even Krystal Kalinske Ball. She loves Kyle so much, she married him, but not take his last name. I'm just confused about this. Does this matter anymore, or is just the norm where Kamala Harris, who isn't her name supposed to be Kamala Imhoff? Instead, Kamala Harris just runs as Kamala Harris and say, don't forget about my husband, Doug Imhoff. So wouldn't you be Mrs. Imhoff? Yeah, but call me Mrs. Harris, huh? Like, so call you Mrs. Imhoff, but Miss Harris? Or which one is it? So I'm just kind of confused how this marriage thing works nowadays. Like, if you marry your wife, but if she has a bigger name than you, then she doesn't have to take your last name. I don't get it. Could anyone explain that to me? Why her name is Krystal Ball instead of Krystal Kalinske? Not that it matters. I'm just curious how these things work. Why is Kamala Harris' name Kamala Harris and not Kamala Imhoff? I'm just curious. If anyone knows, let me know. But yes, so she doesn't really care. So she can act as if she's fighting for justice and fighting for the lefties and the progressives and stuff, because she's going to be fine regardless of who's in office. Donald Trump wins, she's fine. Another Democrat wins, she will be fine. Another Republican wins, she will be fine. So she just gets to kind of act as if she's speaking towards a community that she knows nothing about. So think about it like this. If there was a cop documentary, would you want someone who's never been a cop speaking for the documentary? If you're doing an NFL documentary, would you want someone who's never been in the NFL speaking as an authoritative figure? Now, when we're talking about the working class, right? Why will we want someone that's not of the working class speaking for us? Well, they say our talking points. No, they need to be talking to us, not saying our talking points. Just let us say it. We don't need we're not ventriloquists, right? We should be saying, but they don't ever talk to the people that they claim to be advocating for. They're supposed to be fighting for us, but what do you have in common with Krystal Ball? Someone that has a 44 million net worth. What do you have in common with her? You have some common rhetoric, but what actions do you have in common? You don't live like her. You don't drive the same type of cars. You don't have access to the same places that she does. And this is no different. This is not just about Krystal. This is about any of these pundits. People love them so much and think that they're really fighting for you, but all they're doing is just talking. You can do mutual aid in your neighborhood if you're not already doing that. You can skill share. You can organize and build. Do you think Krystal Ball is going to come if you have a backpack drive, which you can organize yourself? If you have a book drive, do you think she's going to come? If you have a political rally, do you think she's going to come? You know what I mean? So if she's not going to come, why should her opinion be so valued by people that she's not fighting for? She's fighting for the elite, people that have a net worth like her. She's pandering to people that are really of the working class. Here, look, I'm just like you, but she lives a life that you know nothing about and she knows nothing about. She knows nothing about struggling, and her level of struggling is, I struggle with mental health and, depression. It's like a lot of that stuff was self-inflicted. That's not the same as someone who had to eat sleep for dinner. Have you ever had to eat sleep for dinner? Yeah. That's something that's harsh that people can't even fathom. Krystal Ball don't know nothing about that, but you think that she could speak for you? I'm speaking for the working class. No, have somebody from the slums speak. Let's hear what they got to say. Unfiltered, unbiased, right? Not someone that you paid or someone that you vetted to toe the line. That's real journalism. That's somebody that's really standing up for you, not somebody that dresses cute, is all makeup in a fully heated and furnished studio and you think they're standing up for you. No, they're pandering to you so you can give them more money that you don't have while they get rich. Here, like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to get to my Patreon. Yeah, I think you should be liking, sharing, subscribing. I think you should be giving out super chats and cash apps, but not to people like Krystal Ball or Sagar or Kyle or anything like that. They're already good. The people that's struggling, the people that's in the mud, the people that are willing to risk their career and their livelihood just to give you information. Those are the people that you should be funding. You're funding Starbucks. Starbucks is not going out of business. You're funding McDonald's. Then people like to pop their collar. I'm doing so well, so it should be nothing for you to send me $20, $100. Whoa, that's too much. I thought $100 was pocket change. $100 is pocket change until you have to put $100 towards a book or a course or a skill that's going to teach you something. Then suddenly it's too much. It's not too much for you to go to a hotel to trick off on a floozy, but it is too much for you to pay to learn some scholarship. Something to think about.
He is a lightning rod here.
No, because he's a lightning rod. He's a liberal.
I don't think that is deniable. But in any case, that's the reason that they have made the face. He wasn't even the only journalist there, by the way. So for Don Lemon, for them to even float charging him with the FACE Act, with this KKK, insane. And like, on principle, as journalists, we should be vehemently opposed to that. Because genuinely, you may not, I know you don't like his views. He's a liberal, all of that.
It's not because he's a liberal that I hate him, but yes.
But okay. you don't like it.
No, but here's the difference.
As a journalist, like, the ability to go in to document this protest, to be live, to talk to the protesters, to talk to the parishioners, to talk to the pastor, to talk to everybody on the ground. It was genuine. It was actually valuable content, and it is worthwhile looking at it because, I think he, in some senses, did a favor to the right because you do get
insane tactics.
Yes.
No.
Because you do get more of a sense of, you can't just view the church members there in a caricaturish way when you actually listen to what they have to say and you're there in the room with them and experiencing that. Now, for me, in terms of the protest tactics, do I have like a moral issue with? No, I don't have a moral issue. I think it's crazy that there's an ICE field officer who is in any sort of position of moral leadership.
Fine, but that's
this is a guy. Well, it is my business. It is a business. I mean, I'm a taxpayer of this country.
So Sagar says it's not her business if one of the church leaders has some sort of position within ICE. I'm not sure what his position is, right? And Sagar saying, well, that's none of your business. How is it his business what Don Lemon is doing? If Don Lemon paid his money to fly out to Minneapolis and to do his journalistic duties of filming people, he brought a live crew. How is that any of Sagar's business? It's not. He's trying to make it his business for the sake of this content and segment. So as much as he's trying to say, oh, it's not your business that if this dude in the church was some sort of ICE enforcement officer. Yeah, well, why are you even covering this? Because this is neither of your business, according to your logic, Sagar. So this dude breaking points with broken logic.
Paying his salary.
Sure, they can protest.
They are,
outside
in the local community. Let me just finish for a second. So, do I have a moral issue with? No, I don't have a moral issue with it. Do I think, and people get very mad when you say this, do I think it was tactically smart? No, of course not. You've given a major propaganda win to your adversary. You protected 0 immigrants, right? You're undermining the good work of the Will Stancils of the world who are out in the streets, tracking ICE agents, blowing whistles, and recording. I mean, and Trump posted actually yesterday before he started posting like his private text with Emmanuel Macron or whatever, he posted that there was, quote, too much focus on ICE agents and not enough on the fraud. Why? Because he sees that these videos that everybody's seeing of, pulling some elderly American citizen out in practically his underwear in the snow, tear gassing a 6-month-old baby, shooting now a Venezuelan national on top of the killing of Renee Good. Like, he's seeing that this is not going well for him in the public opinion. Those tactics are working. And instead today of being able to talk about those things and those abuses, we're having to have a debate about, interrupting church services in this way that I think for a lot of Americans is going to look over the top and very uncomfortable.
It's because it is over the top and it is ridiculous. Like, the people violate the social contract at the most basic level.
But can I ask you one thing though? Because
so here he is talking about the social contract. The social contract. What was Kyle Rittenhouse doing during the social contract? What was George Zimmerman doing during the social contract? So this whole social contract is always up for interpretation. They say the social contract means you can't do this and you can't do that. What does the social contract say about pedos? Could anyone enlighten me? Enlighten me, please. What does the social contract say about pedos? Instead, he's not pushing for any accountability. He's not pushing. And even with the whole release the files, this is why people sound goofy saying, release the files, release the files. If there was anything in there incriminating, why would they release it? And if it was, they would have already destroyed it. They're not just going to have it hanging around and say, yeah, this is the dirt. And, you know, maybe one day it will come out. No, this is the dirt and we're going to destroy it. And then they have things that are enough of it to say, hey, look, we didn't destroy everything. We didn't tamper with evidence. But all of the people who are in power, the people who had power to allegedly ensure that Jeffrey Epstein wasn't here anymore, they have the power to ensure that they don't get touched. Really think about this. The most elaborate, disgusting, grotesque, yet strategic, yet powerful pedo ring probably the globe has ever seen. And only 2 people were prosecuted, and one of them allegedly said, I don't want to be here anymore, so let me take my own life. Allegedly, right? What happened to all those names? They got a bunch of photos. They released photos, which doesn't even mean anything. It's just propaganda. Oh, look, he was in a photo with them. So then you start speculating. No, tell us facts. Don't release a photo and say, here, speculate away. Don't release something that's redacted and show a name. And then as soon as it gets good, you redact it and say, this is in the name of national security. Where is the accountability? Instead, he's railing against BLM, railing against George Floyd, someone who's not even here, but he doesn't want anyone to take accountability for the pedo ring. How does that fit into the social contract?
Enough on the fraud. Why? Because he sees that these videos that everybody's seeing of, you know, pulling some elderly American citizen out in practically his underwear in the snow, tear gassing a 6-month-old baby, shooting now a Venezuelan national on top of the killing of Renee Good. Like, he's seeing that this is not going well for him in the public opinion. Those tactics are working. And instead today of being able to talk about those things and those abuses, we're having to have a debate about interrupting church services in this way that I think for a lot of Americans is going to look over the top and very uncomfortable.
It's because it is over the top and it is ridiculous. Like, the people violate the social contract at the most basic level.
But can I ask you one thing though? Because do you also, I think you used the term egregious. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Do you also think it's egregious that ICE has interrupted church services to make arrests of undocumented immigrants?
But see, no, this is kind of my point, is that it is a race to the bottom. And if we want to have some sort of norms whenever we're like, and by the way, even then, it's a bit difficult.
But do you?
Because it is a bit difficult when you have churches who basically declare themselves as a place where the law itself, immigration law, does not be allowed to enforce. Like, that would be like saying that you can commit any crime inside of a church, and as long as you do, that you're going to be immune from federal or state prosecution. So, you know, I do think it is fundamentally different. And then second, you know, on this journalist point.
In a sense, I mean, I agree with you that it's fundamentally different, because the harm of coming in and like arrest, like those people that were at the church, I think they were upset and they were angry. They're fine, right? To come in and interrupt service and to make arrests in front of everybody and with children and families there, like, that is deeply.
So you could just never arrest. If a murderer was hiding inside of a church, could you go and you could catch them?
We're not talking about we're not talking about murder.
Look, a violation of the law is a violation of the law.
We're talking about what is a civil offense in terms of.
Not all the time. We've had multiple illegals who lived in churches to escape prosecution.
Okay, well, so then it's clear then You find it egregious when people protest in a church, but you do not find it egregious when ICE raids a church, kitted out in all their military gear, and pulls people out.
I would not do it. I would not do it for somebody personally. I can only speak for myself.
Yeah, now he's starting to sound a little bit shaky because he's saying protesting in church. Well, that's immoral. You can't do that. But ICE going in, because mind you, the narrative is that these protesters stormed in, but there hasn't been a clear definition of what they mean by stormed in. Did they run? Did they see people that said don't come in and they just blew past them? They're framing it as they stormed in, but did they walk in calmly and proceed to do a protest which people thought was annoying? That doesn't sound like storming in. You can say they were agitating, they were being annoying, but that doesn't sound like storming in. So these things do matter. Let me rewind it a little bit back, and then I'm gonna get into my further point.
When people protest in a church, but you do not find it egregious when ICE raids a church, kitted out in all their military gear, and pulls people out.
I would not do it. I would not.
So once again, the protesters are bad, but ICE coming in there with military gear, guns out, all sorts of advanced weaponry, that's not immoral. But someone going in there making annoying chants is. Like, this breaking points, but broken logic. Brought to you by Sagar and Jetty.
When people protest in a church, but you do not find it egregious when ICE raids a church, kitted out in all their military gear, and pulls people out.
I would not do it. I would not do it for somebody personally. I can only speak for myself.
Yeah.
If it was just purely like, like women, children, people who have committed no crime, I would say don't do it. I think that you should be able to do it a different way. What I have seen though is there have been extremely high profile illegal activists who are actually have committed felonies who go and hide in churches at the direction often of some of these NGOs, and then they use that policy against them.
Let's use the specifics of what we've seen unfold. There's a lawsuit right now against the federal government alleging violations of people's constitutional right to worship and disrupting, their religious practices that were brought by a variety of religious organizations. I know the Quakers are involved. There's a number of other religious groups that are involved as well. And what they allege is not only that these raids have occurred, during services, on church property, et cetera. But it creates a climate where not only undocumented immigrants, but many other church members are fearful of even going to church. So you are, so if you're upset about this incursion in terms of, protest activity, where I think you're wrong about the FACE Act being applicable here, but, I'm not a legal act.
It says you can't intimidate or disrupt a
No, it does not. No, it doesn't say disrupt.
I'll find the text.
You can find it's about threats, intimidation, but it also specifically carves out peaceful First Amendment
that was not
protest activity.
You got kids screaming, you're following people to their cars.
It is 100% peaceful.
No,
but in any case, putting that aside, right? I think if you are upset about people going into a church to protest peacefully during a church service, I would say that to be morally consistent, you should be even more upset about the violation by federal agents coming in during service to arrest people. And so that's why, the right's upset about this. Again, I think the tactic was not smart. I think it caused, gave the right something that obviously they see as a propaganda win. I don't think it was the right way to go about things. But I also can't take seriously the rights like, oh my God, the sanctity of religion, blah, blah, blah. Because these are also, in some cases, the same people. I think Tommy Tuberville, yesterday, said that all Muslims are terrible and the enemies within the gates. Like, they have no respect for any sort of blanket religious tradition. It's only when it comes to, something they don't like from the left, and specifically with regard to
but okay, you can say the other side is inconsistent, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't condemn it. And here we have the law specifically says injure, intimidate, or interfere with religious worship. It's like open and shut for every single one of these You don't think that they injure, intimidate, or interfere?
They did not injure,
intimidate, or interfere.
And again, there is
I'm sorry, Krystal, that is ridiculous.
Specific carve-outs for, again, peaceful First Amendment protest activity.
I don't think.
Now, do I think, maybe like a trespassing charge potentially, but the person that they focused in on here is specifically Don Lemon, and that to me, I think should be, again, as a journalist, I think you should find very troubling.
So here's my transgressive take. I would agree with you if we had not already had multiple journalists who were prosecuted on the day of January 6th. You had at least three streamers that I know of, Isabella DeLuca, Baked Alaska, and Owen Schroyer, who were all prosecuted by the DOJ.
No one knows about those people and no one cares about those people. But this shows you his hypocrisy, right? So because it happened to his friends, he said, I would agree with you, but it happened to my friends. It's bad what's been happened to Don Lemon, but hey, tough luck, Buttercup. They did it to my friends, so they can do it to Don Lemon. Dude, you sound like an extremely whiny, petulant brat. Which one is it? They say two wrongs don't make a right. He acts like he's this righteous dude. He's always pretending to be a bastion of morality. And here, when she lays out like, hey, you're a journalist, you shouldn't be okay with what they doing to Don Lemon. Even if you don't agree with them, it's an abuse of power. It's an attack against a journalist, but attack on journalism, period. Journalism is your profession. You should be against this. And he said he would be against it, but since it happened to his friends, hey, so what? It just is what it is. How cowardly is that? I don't know why anyone listens to this clown dude. He's educated, born with a silver spoon, a model minority, and these are the type of takes that he gives. Okay, let's rewind that back and get back into it.
I don't think.
Now, do I think, maybe like a trespassing charge potentially, but the person that they focused in on here is specifically Don Lemon, and that to me, I think should be, again, as a journalist, I think you should find very troubling.
So here's my transgressive take.
Well, this is the thing. They're not. So when people say they stormed the Capitol on January 6th, this is backed by footage, right? You see people storming the Capitol. This is why Ashley Babbitt, she got some hot lead put in her, unfortunately, because she was storming the Capitol, and that security officer feared for his life. And since he feared for his life and the people were not complying with the orders and they were breaking the social contract, as Saagar would put it, he had to put some hot lead in her, unfortunately, right? That's what happens when you storm. These people, no one could clearly define, and there's no footage of them storming, but them walking in and saying chants that you find annoying somehow is annoying. And that's just like January 6th. Okay, but January 6th, you said all of those protesters were vindicated, which is why Trump pardoned them. They actually did storm the Capitol. Whether you believe it was an insurrection or not, they were extremely violent. There were death threats. There were no death threats here. So which one was really more violent? And if you believe those violent ruffians who were pardoned during January 6th, then yeah, this protest, Saagar should be perfectly fine with it. But instead, because he's so obsessed with blaming black people and BLM, he acts like this was just a bloodbath, and I can't believe my eyes what I seen. Quit talking about. It's funny because he's saying that we should move on and stop talking about January 6th, but he keeps bringing up BLM. And then he's trying to make it seem as if this is some comparison with January 6th. If there was any comparison, then that means that these protesters should get off scot-free. If violent protesters got off scot-free in January 6th, then these protesters should get off scot-free. They weren't violent. They were chanting annoying things that you didn't want to hear. That's not violence.
I would agree with you if we had not already had multiple journalists who were prosecuted on the day of January 6th. You had at least three streamers that I know of, Isabella DeLuca, Baked Alaska, and Owen Schroyer, who were all prosecuted by the DOJ. And some of them actually spent time in prison, even though they were streaming what was going on. Under the same thing, you could make that argument, is that they were interviewing people, giving context.
Do you support that?
No, I don't.
Okay, then you should be consistent.
And that's why I was saying, that's my transgressive take, is while I despise.
What was the point of that? So he says all this to say that he doesn't support the way Don Lemon is being treated. And then he gives this anecdote of how his friends were mistreated. Like, so what, bruh? You said that this country wasn't racist. You said that, you know, he was back in the blue no matter who. So, hey, you just got to let law enforcement cook. Now he's complaining about the justice system. You do the crime, you do the time. Why didn't you just comply? Now he's complaining that his people got locked up and had to do some time. Hey, you know, this is not a racist system. White supremacy and systemic racism doesn't exist. The justice system isn't an injustice system. So what the hell are you complaining about, Saagar? Why are you acting like a victim? No, seriously. Does anyone have a tiny violin that I could cue?
Who were all prosecuted by the DOJ, and some of them actually spent time in prison, even though they were streaming what was going on. Under the same thing, you could make that argument, is that they were interviewing people, giving context.
Do you support that?
No, I don't.
Okay, then you should be consistent.
And that's why I was saying, that's my transgressive take, is while I despise Don Lemon, I think we should set a standard, actually. And this is part of my frustration, is we're all focusing on Don. No, it's about the story is the protesters and Keith Ellison and Governor Walz and Jacob Frey and the entire lib industrial complex, which has zero to say about it. Pramila Jayapal even did the meme where she said it was mostly peaceful whenever she was. And
I mean, it was
that's
peaceful,
why I'm like,
but that's
again,
true.
Look, if Nick Shirley,
let's put Governor Walz's.
So here he goes. He's mad because people said that this protest was mostly peaceful, and it was. There was no violence, right? People were saying that January 6th was mostly peaceful, and Saagar would be on that squad, right? He'll act like he has some sort of, you know, tepid pushback against it, but he doesn't talk about January 6th with the same fervor. When he talks about BLM and black people, it's literally crust in the side of his mouth from the drool coming out, because that's how much he loves denigrating us. But when it comes to the January 6th, it's like this dude's not impassioned at all. But he's just whining incessantly. It's quite pathetic to hear.
Pramila Jayapal even did the meme where she said it was mostly peaceful.
And then he said it wasn't mostly peaceful because kids were screaming. Bruh, have you ever been to a toy store? Have you ever been to Disneyland? Have you ever been to a daycare? Have you ever been to a TK school? Kids are screaming there. I mean, but nobody will say that this is an unruly, chaotic environment. It's just like kids will be kids, right? So because kids were allegedly screaming in church, how many kids were screaming in church? How you know the kid didn't need his diaper change and was screaming? Did y'all see any videos of kids screaming? Why were they screaming? And how many kids were there? How many kids were there and how many kids were screaming? It's just all to incite you and push out this propagandistic narrative. Kids were screaming. So because kids were screaming, then what? What does that mean? So now we should side with Trump because kids were screaming. We should be on the side of ICE because kids screamed in the church. Okay, how many kids? Where's the footage? Where's the video? Just trust me, bro. So it's like none of this stuff is being questioned or fact checked in real time. He's just kind of throwing it out there. The church protest wasn't peaceful because some kids were screaming. Okay, when I seen the videos, I didn't see or hear any kids screaming. What am I missing here? Y'all let me know.
Lib industrial complex, which has zero to say about it. Pramila Jayapal even did the meme where she said it was mostly peaceful whenever she was. And it's
it was
that's
peaceful,
why I'm like,
but that's
again,
true.
Look, if Nick Shirley,
let's put Governor Walz's. Well, Nick Shirley did go and demand to see a bunch of kids at a daycare.
Walks into
and no one's arresting him.
If a Somali fraudster was a leader of a mosque and it was Nick Shirley and people went in, these people would be screaming to high heaven. You think they'd be talking about mostly peaceful? Not for a second.
And you'd be defending him.
No, I actually would not be defending him because I think this is crazy behavior. I'm even said that Nick Shirley literally did a piss poor job and is a retard who doesn't know what the word benevolent means. So I'm not somebody who's sitting here and defending all of these types of tactics. And I defended all the January 6th streamers. I don't think Don Lemon should be charged, which is why I'm so frustrated that Don Lemon somehow, by the way, we can get to his little clip about claiming white supremacy and denigrating people. Well, again, the enduring image of that protest is an Asian family who are trying to protect their child from these freaks who are screaming in their face. But this is the issue, is that BLM, people always are like, why does he talk about it so much? This is the beating heart of liberal activism.
But
the right to disrupt, the right to be antisocial.
Yes, that is protest.
Yes, no,
that is protest.
No, but to
it's
what
true.
end? Is that they believe that their moral righteousness gives them the right to destroy, disrupt,
can you acknowledge,
loot,
though,
riot.
Can you acknowledge?
Here we go with the unhinged thing. So now he's saying like the liberalist, their ideology is destroy, burn, loot, riot, but it's framed under BLM. Look how cowardly this is. So he says that the liberals, this is the liberal ideology. When you think of a liberal person, close your eyes and think of a liberal person. You don't think of a black person. So they use buzzwords like liberal so they don't have to say who he's actually blaming. It's BLM and this is a liberal ideology. So you're saying BLM is being led by a liberal ideology. So who is the leader of the liberals? Then they have to tell you it's not a black person. So if you're saying it's not a black person leading it, why are you blaming this other person? If someone was leading a football team, would you blame the water boy? Is the water boy leading the team? No, but let's blame him anyways. But you see that the leader is right over there. Why aren't you blaming him? It's the referee's fault. Is the referee leading the team? So here he is. He just keeps railing against BLM. He's saying that BLM is George Soros funded, is DNC funded. Why isn't he blaming the people who are funding it? They say cut off the head of the snake. So BLM isn't the head of the snake. Why is he intentionally avoiding the head of the snake? Saying that this is all liberal propaganda. Who runs the libs? What racial demographic runs the libs? See, because if they're talking about what about Chicago and Oakland and saying Crips and Bloods and black culture, right? They're specifically identifying a racial group, an ethnic group. They want specificity with that. But then when it comes to BLM, the big bad boogeyman who's being led by George Soros and the DNC and these dark money groups who are non-black, suddenly nobody wants to talk about race. What happened to accountability? What happened to personal responsibility? What happened to journalistic integrity and accuracy? And of course, Krystal Ball, she's not going to call him out because she don't give a flying flip about black people. All she cares about is winning a debate. She has a net worth of $44 million, according to Roger Meadows. So yeah, the status quo remaining the same, it's not going to affect her. But this dude is always seething whenever he talks about BLM. When he talks about any other group, he's super calm.
Somehow, by the way, we can get to his little clip about claiming white supremacy and denigrating people. Well, again, the enduring image of that protest is an Asian family who are trying to protect their child from these freaks who are screaming in their face. But this is the issue, is that BLM, people always are like, why does he talk about it so much? This is the beating heart of liberal activism.
But
the right to disrupt, the right to be antisocial.
That is protest.
Yes, no,
that is protest.
No, but to what end? Is that they believe that their moral righteousness gives them the right to destroy, disrupt,
can you acknowledge,
loot, riot.
Can you acknowledge, though, that it is some crazy business to have a guy who is the field officer, like the head of the agency, the regional agency of ICE, to be in a position of moral authority like that? Like that is wild.
But that's not up to me to defend. That's up to the church. If they're okay with it, then fine, whatever. So there are crazy black pastors around here who literally believe in like straight black nationalism. Do I think that's consistent with American values? No.
Why does he bring up black people so much? The dude doesn't hang around black people. He doesn't like black people. But every time he wants to say something negative, he brings up black people. He didn't cover all of the white pastors saying that slavery was a good thing. Okay, if slavery was so good, do you think it would be okay if your little Lily W. daughter was enslaved? How could you say that? You said slavery was good because they learned skill. I want your daughter to be a productive citizen. So how about you sell her into slavery and I offer you a price you can't refuse? How dare you say that? But you just said it was a good thing. So was slavery good or wasn't it? So here he is whining about black pastors saying they're pushing black nationalism, but he won't talk about white nationalism. Black nationalism is not the same as white nationalism. Same thing when people say black power, we're not trying to attack and eliminate and denigrate any other group. When many of you guys say white power, that's at the expense of other groups. That means we want to eradicate other groups because we are the powerful, might makes right, and we want to show you how dominant we are. That ain't what it means when we say black power. But you can't, you see this dude is just obsessed with black people. This is like pathetic. He's giving an example of black pastor. Dude, you're Indian. You don't have any Indian pastors to give examples of. You don't have any Jewish rabbis to give examples of. He hates black people, but somehow can't keep us out of our mouth. I thought your mouth was full because Trump's nuts are firmly sitting in there and any other bigoted right-wing talking point. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's still enough room to spout out this anti-black drivel.
Righteousness
was not-
gives them the right to destroy, disrupt,
can you acknowledge,
loot,
though,
riot.
Can you acknowledge, though, that it is some crazy business to have a guy who is the field officer, like the head of the agency, the regional agency of ICE, to be in a position of moral authority like that? Like that is that is
but
wild.
that's not up to me to defend. That's up to the church. If they're okay with it, then fine, whatever. So there are crazy black pastors around here who literally believe in like straight black nationalism. Do I think that's consistent with American values? No.
In lawsuits about all of the aggressive and illegal tactics here, and I think
then he said, "Do I think that's consistent with American values, bruh? If Saagar says this, especially on Twitter, a bunch of those MAGA maniacs." And the heritage Americans, they gonna let you know American values. They gonna call him a Jeet. Saagar Injeti? No, Saagar Pajit Jetty. That's what they gonna call you. So him over here talking about American values, bro, you're an immigrant. And that's how they always see you. I was born here. Yeah, but they see you as an anchor baby. And he thinks that because he gets degrees and gets into the upper echelons of society, I make millions of dollars, so I'm just as American as you. Yeah, go tell that to Tucker Carlson. Go tell that to Nick Fuentes. Go tell that to anyone that considers themselves a heritage American. They'll let you know, like, bruh, you are not like us, Saagar. So him over here trying to say a black pastor believing in black nationalism, he said that's not American values, but he won't say that a white pastor believing in white nationalism, he won't say that that's not American values. Who is he to say what American values are, bro? You're an immigrant. Like, you don't dictate what American values are. You have to try to assimilate into American values. It's not in you. It's on you. It's on you because we fought for you to be here. He didn't fight for anything. I don't know where this dude's from, India or something like that. He comes from one of the upper caste system. He's not fighting for equality in his homeland. People like him go back to his homeland to live like kings and subjugate the people there. They don't fight for their homeland. They just come over here and try to tell us what American values are and all this other type of stuff. But I'm being extremely mild with my rhetoric. This is why Vivek Ramaswamy got ran off of social media, because he was trying to say that America, before he was talking about black people, so they was like, it's fine, he talking about the niggas. Then he started telling white people that they were too lazy and y'all watched too much Saved by the Bell. Y'all didn't like people like Steve Urkel. Y'all like the jocks like Slater and Zach and stuff. So Vivek got his tandoori wake up call. He was over there trying to call Americans lazy, and they got him up off there. He was saying, why are you guys calling me Pajit? That's unfair. He was okay with us being called nigga and nigger. It's just a word. Well, Pajit is just a word. Get over it, bruh. There's nobody getting lynched in the streets being called a Jeet, but there have been people that are being mass incarcerated, unalive, police brutality, and then called a nigger afterwards. So that's the difference. But you know, this dude Sagar is just like his anti-black vitriol. It's he can't mask it. But like I said, Crystal Ball, she's unequipped, unwilling, unable to push back. And not only that, like, she's good, so I just don't think that she cares. She's crashing out for immigrants, but all this stuff he's saying about black people, like, she's not even giving any pushback, because it's just all like, let's just save the immigrants. But if all lives matter, that means black lives matter too. I guess they only matter if they're an immigrant. But let's rewind it back and get back into it.
Yeah, but to
It's
what end?
true.
Is that they
Listen,
believe
again,
that their moral
I think this
righteousness
was not-
gives them the right to destroy, disrupt,
can you acknowledge,
loot,
though,
riot.
Can you acknowledge, though, that it is some crazy business to have a guy who is the field officer, like the head of the agency, the regional agency of ICE, to be in a position of moral authority like that? Like, that is
Well,
that is
but that's
wild.
not up to me to defend. That's up to the church. If they're okay with it, then fine, whatever. So there are crazy black pastors around here who literally believe in like straight black nationalism. Do I think that's consistent with American values? No.
In lawsuits about all of the aggressive and illegal tactics here, and I think the
he wasn't even there.
And I think the reason why people, oftentimes comment on how much you bring up Black Lives Matter. And like the level of energy that you bring to this, which is some private individuals who did a protest that you don't like, but then to
I might have to do a segment on this. This was my chef kiss. They ran Vivek Tether Swami, Vivek Racist Swami, Vivek Hot Pastrami. They ran him off. They said, "You're out of here, buddy," or they said, "You're out of here, Jeet." Vajit Ramaswamy, they ran bro off. So yeah, it was the Heritage Americans, but like Vivek said, racism didn't exist. He said it, he said there were like the final burning embers of racism. He was like, we kind of just need to stomp it out. So he was saying systemic racism didn't exist. And if it did exist, it was against white people. So the same people that he was like glazing and praising, he had like they nuts all in his mouth, teabagging them. And then now they're saying like, hey, after we teabagged you, get out of my country, Jeet. And then now he's like, oh my God, this is not the America I know. Like, bro, you're an immigrant. Like, this has always been America. Like, where have you been at, buddy?
me, the much more important and consequential part of this story is those are like relatively powerless individuals, right?
It's not true.
Of course it is.
No, it's not true.
Of course
you're looking at it as in a vacuum and not in a vast like permission structure.
Can I finish? Who did a thing that you don't like? Okay. I think that is so much less consequential than the fact that you have the federal government with all of its powers who are aggressively and illegally using tactics in a widespread manner that amounts to a terror campaign in these communities. And with this story specifically, I find the most important, most troubling thing not to be some tactics that I don't think are effective, but to be the fact that you immediately reach for, let me criminalize this journalism. That's the part that is has far more far-reaching consequences than, some protesters did a thing that you found to be distasteful.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would give you the same thing. Is I find many of the to the extent that I have problems with ICE, it is violation of U.S. due process, violation of U.S. rights. Fundamentally, though, like you, I support deporting people who are here illegally. So yes, my tactical objection is going to be on that. But fundamentally, I think that people who are illegally should leave. You don't agree with that. That's fine. But this gets to my point about the moral equivalence is they are so certain in their moral righteousness that they can walk into and disrupt every facet of our lives. They can burn our cities to the ground. They can turn every major blue city into a literal shithole for 2 to 3 years, spike the murder rate, take over federal and educational institutions. That's why you're saying powerless. Completely not true.
But is that happening
U.S.
now?
elite? No, but it did happen.
But okay.
And that's why people like us bring it up, because when they were in power, and then Keith Ellison, who is in power, is defending this, we see with our own eyes very clearly, oh, Right. So when you people are in power, they're going to allow this. They're going to use the same selective political prosecution. Nobody gave two shits about journalism when all of these these three, I think it might have even been 5 streamers who were all charged under January 6th. They held it up. They said they're not legitimate journalists. Now when Don Lemon is here, because he's black and gay, then, all of a sudden we've rediscovered the First Amendment. There is zero consistency. Like there is.
I think there is zero consistency in saying it is fine.
Okay, y'all want to talk about zero consistency? Do y'all remember earlier in the stream? If not, I'm going to try to rewind it back, where Saagar said him being black and gay had nothing to do with anything. Now here he is playing identity politics and saying, no, this is because he's black and gay. So this dude is super contradictory. And then we're going to have to debunk this lie real quick, because once again, Krystal is either unwilling, unable, or incapable of pushing back on this specific point where he says cities were burned to the ground, but they never tell you what cities. Cities is plural. So that would mean multiple. So you should be able to name at least one. Instead, they just say cities were burned to the ground during BLM. But that's not true. So let's just see, right? Let's see. Let me know if y'all have any issue reading this. Could y'all see that? Don't take my word for it. Look it up. The claim that Black Lives Matter protests burnt cities to the ground is false. Right? What's the opposite of facts? The opposite of facts is false, and a significant exaggeration of the events during the 2020 protests. Remind me what year it is again? Oh, yeah. It's 2026, and they still talking about 2020? Get over it, okay? Except George Floyd. And these are from PolitiFact, from USA Today, and other organizations. While some protests following George Floyd's murder in 2020 involved instances of fire, vandalism, and property damage, these incidents were typically isolated and did not result in entire cities being burnt or being destroyed. So anyone that's ever had their house burned down, I was one of those people, but my house actually didn't burn down. The kitchen burned down, and the fire department got there in time so that the house didn't burn down. But let's just imagine that my house burned down. If my house had burned down, would that have mean that the city burned down? And this is what the lies and the intellectual dishonesty of people like Saagar and the people that want to blame BLM for everything. Okay, they burned cities to the ground. Name me one. Matter of fact, you said cities. Name me 3. Could you name me 2? And you said they burned the city to the ground. At least it would be better if you said they burned property to the ground or buildings to the ground. That's more vague and broad, and you can get away with that. But once you say they burned cities, now you're just lying. Okay, it's estimated that the total damages were around $2 billion, making it one of the costliest civil unrest in U.S. history. But this damage was uneven, localized, and not total city destruction, which means they didn't burn any cities to the ground. Anyone that says cities were burned to the ground is lying, because they can't name one city that was burned to the ground. That's a lie. That's not misinformation. It's a lie. The arrest in connection to the protest numbered the thousands, indicating that consequences were faced, mostly for minor offenses. So when they talk about accountability, yeah, people were held accountable. Thousands of people were arrested. These people weren't pardoned and given slap on the wrist, unlike the violent ruffians in the January 6th protest. Most of what they were being arrested for were for minor offenses, not violent offenses. Okay. Many of the claims conflate or exaggerate the nature duration, and perpetrators of violent incidents. Notably, groups labeled as Antifa or BLM are often misrepresented or blamed broadly without evidence of coordination or citywide violence. So they've just become buzzwords. He's Antifa, he's BLM, but they won't talk about the Proud Boys. They won't talk about Patriot Front, Oath Keepers, all of these white MAGA militia, white nationalists, bigoted groups. They won't mention their names, but they will say Antifa, who is supposed to be anti-fascism, right? We're all supposed to be against fascism, so we should all be anti-fascistic in principle, right? Whether you align with the organization or not. Much of the protest was Antifa. Antifa was out there with guns and agitating and stuff because Antifa was out there. Somehow BLM gets blamed for it. But there were specific fires, such as the Minneapolis church fire, and they found that these were unrelated protests to BLM. But yet, who got blamed for it? BLM, i.e., Black people. Most demonstrations were peaceful. So instead of focusing on the most that were peaceful, they look at the handful where there was violence and there was destruction and say, this represents the entire movement. Same thing that they do with our community. Look, there is less than 1% of the Black community committing this violent crime, but let's paint the entire community like that. So if that's the standard, if that's the social contract and norm, shouldn't we do that with everyone? If there's a few MAGA maniacs that hate everybody and they're just super flaming racist, right? Shouldn't we generalize the entire community as being bigots and racist? I mean, that's what you do to our community. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. You can't say that, no, that's not what you should do while you're actively doing it. So the narrative that the Black Lives Matter protesters burnt cities to the ground is misleading, and they're trying to hedge. This is not misleading, it's a lie. It overstates the scale and impact of the protest and ignores the peaceful majority and law enforcement actions. And here's another one. Most data from the cities where demographics were recorded show that a substantial majority. Do y'all know what the meaning of majority means? A substantial majority of the Black Lives Matter protesters in 2020 were white, particularly and predominantly in white urban areas. Minneapolis, for example, 85% of the protesters were reported as white. LA, 78% of the protesters were white. So all of the stuff that he's complaining about, it was mostly white people out there doing. But who gets the backlash? BLM, which is a proxy for Black people, which is a proxy for saying it was the niggas. That's really what Saagar wants to say. But yeah, so I think that has debunked his talking point of cities were burnt to the ground. So let me just bring the video back up. Nobody should allow that lie to go unchallenged, but Krystal does. I wonder why.
For ICE agents to go in and raid a church.
Defending this, we see with our own eyes very clearly, oh, right. So when you people are in power, they're going to allow this. They're going to use the same selective political prosecution. Nobody gave two shits about journalism when all of these three, I think it might have even been 5 streamers who were all charged under January 6th. They held it up. They said they're not legitimate journalists. Now when Don Lemon is here, because he's Black and gay, then, all of a sudden we've rediscovered the First Amendment. There is zero consistency. Like there is.
I think there is zero consistency in saying it is fine. Even the only journalist there, by the way. So for Don Lemon, for them to even float charging him with the FACE Act, with this KKK, insane. And like on principle, as journalists, we should be vehemently opposed to that. Because genuinely, you may not, I know you don't like his views, he's a liberal, all of that.
It's not because he's a liberal that I hate him, but yes.
But okay. you don't like him.
No, but here's the difference.
As a journalist, like the ability to go in to document this protest, to be live, to talk to, because he's hated. Yes, I think because he's Black and gay, All of that plays into it.
He's the first person to remind you he's black and gay. Okay, that's not. It has nothing to do.
There is no doubt that.
So did y'all hear that? He said, "Oh no, he's black and gay. It has nothing to do with that." I rewinded that back. So give me 1 second.
Is truly insane, and we all know the reason why they are focusing on him, which I think is also worth saying as well, because he's famous, because he's liberal, because he's hated. Yes, I think because he's black and gay. All of that plays into it.
He's the first person to remind you he's black and gay. Okay, that's not. It has nothing to do.
There is no.
Y'all heard Saagar saying, "Oh no, no, no," and then later in the conversation, he's talking about how his blackness and gayness does have something to do with this. So this dude's all over the place.
Moral equivalence is they are so certain in their moral righteousness that they can walk into and disrupt every facet of our lives. They can burn our cities to the ground. They can turn every major blue city into a literal shithole for 2 to 3 years, spike the murder rate, take over federal and educational institutions. That's why you're saying powerless. Completely not true.
But is that happening
U.S.
now?
elite? No, but it did happen.
But okay,
and that's why people like us bring it up, because when they were in power, and then Keith Ellison, who is in power, is defending this. We see with our own eyes very clearly. Oh, right. So when you people are in power, they're going to allow this. They're going to use the same selective political prosecution. Nobody gave 2 shits about journalism when all of these 3, I think it might have even been 5 streamers who were all charged under January 6th. They held it up. They said they're not legitimate journalists. Now when Don Lemon is here, because he's black and gay, then all of a sudden we've rediscovered the First Amendment. There is zero consistency.
I thought that he said him being black and gay didn't matter. Huh? Now him being black and gay actually does matter? Interesting.
There is
I think there is zero consistency in saying it is fine for ICE agents to go in and raid a church, and you haven't said anything about that until I asked you about it, and to be so incredibly upset about one church service getting interrupted by a handful of protesters.
Because fundamentally,
I think that is wildly
because
inconsistent.
what you're trying to defend is the principle that illegals who are tens of millions here present can go and find safe sanctuary in a church and anywhere in the country.
What I'm trying to defend,
I don't believe criminals have the right to sanctuary
is that
anywhere.
ICE agents should not be brought in to American cities by the thousands to terrorize entire communities, which is what is being done here, and is not about. This is not even about immigration.
Well,
if we're
I know
being
that's
honest,
a convenient topic,
no, that is
but I don't
true.
think it's true.
Then why are they in Minneapolis? Tell me. Tell me why did they choose Minneapolis?
ICE agents are in Minneapolis because of the Nick Shirley video, and because that's how this administration operates.
Right,
I don't think
which has nothing to do with immigration.
Well, there are several,
the vast
1,000
majority,
illegal immigrants who are present in the city.
The overwhelming number of Somali immigrants are in fact
not just Somalis.
American citizens. Yeah, but that's why they're there. I mean, let's just open our eyes to what is really going on here. It has to do with the fact that they hate anyone who's not white and Christian. They are.
At this point, you're probably not avoiding therapy because of stigma. You're probably avoiding therapy because you've become very good at coping.
After anyone who, has opposed to Trump, they hate Walz. They now hate Jacob Fry because he opposed him as well. But I mean, if you look at what these people are actually doing, it's incredibly weak. Like Fry is out there basically saying, there's nothing really.
So here Saagar is saying that they should hate these people because these people are corrupt and immoral. But you shouldn't hate Trump, who is corrupt and immoral. You shouldn't hate all of these bigots that he looks up for. He booty kisses and crack licks for. You shouldn't, you should not like them, but you should hate Tim Walz. Tim Walz is a political doofus and stooge. Go ahead. He's not above reproach. Call him out. But Saagar is going a bit further and saying you should hate him, but he don't think you should hate any of the MAGA maniacs. This dude is just immorally inconsistent.
We can do about ICE agents who are abusing people in the streets, immigrants and Americans alike.
Well, what I think you're ignoring
I am much more upset about that, which has the backing of the largest law enforcement budget in history and is backed by the entire federal government and yes, my taxpayer dollars, then.
And Saagar is an alleged conservative, but he doesn't talk about fiscal responsibility in terms of the bloated budget. He was all for champion of Doge. He had Elon Musk nuts in his mouth. Hey, move over, Trump. I could only fit so many nuts in my mouth. So he had to put Elon's Musk. He took Trump's nuts out, then put Elon Musk's nuts in. That's how Saagar is. Like, he's just a little tap dancing model minority stooge.
One church protest that I think was probably
But that's what I'm
ill-advised.
saying. You're looking at it as an ill-advised church protest and not a sustained campaign since 2014, which has normalized this behavior across the nation and which, again, literally burned almost America
Tell
to
me
the
about
ground.
the tactics that are being used right now.
Yes, I've criticized all those tactics.
So I already debunked that no cities were burned to the ground. So he can't even name one city that was burned to the ground. Now he's taken his lie to a next level. First he told a lie. Now he's lying to the 10th power, saying it literally almost burnt America to the ground. How many people survived BLM? I mean, make a documentary about it, surviving BLM. What happened to you? The only thing that people was doing was calling things CRT and woke, and they couldn't really define what it was. Most of the things people were complaining about was something they seen on TV. They were following bigoted accounts that hate black people, sharing old fight videos from London, videos from Africa, and framing everything as BLM. There were riots happening in other countries and they were blaming black people here, saying, we have black fatigue. You know what I mean? They didn't have fatigue of police brutality. The same people that say that we want smaller government, but somehow they want the police to get bigger. When the people, when they say tread on my rights and don't infringe, who do you think is going to be coming knocking at your door? It's not going to be some poor thug from Baltimore. It's going to be a cop that looks just like you coming with his AR-15 and his robot dog, because you championed the police state because you thought you were sticking it to the blacks. And now you made the police state, you made it codified in law. So now after they done with the blacks, right? Guess who they coming for? Because you're not, like George Carlin said, it's a big club and you ain't in it. You think that you're in it because you follow Elon Musk, who talks about white babies. So you think that Elon Musk is your friend, and then you start crashing out for Elon Musk and he says, hey, thank you, you white idiot. I'm going to replace you with a H-1B visa, Vivek Ramaswamy's cousins.
Tactics here are consistent.
No. I'm talking about the protesters. The protests, tell me about those tactics, because it has been overwhelmingly what people have been doing is documenting what ICE's abuses.
You could say
and it's
that.
been
You could also
very
say
effective.
that they have tried, documenting is a very, very small cry from the vast majority of them actually are trying to disrupt. And, that's a whole other type of conversation where, again, we've normalized it so that ordinary Americans just think that they're like Martin Luther King Jr. reincarnate, going and putting their cars, let's say, often in front of ICE agents whenever they're trying to conduct a raid. I won't even defend some of the tactics of the raid. I think it's
crazy because as much as he hates black people, the only civil rights example he can give is black people, right? Who is the white version of MLK? Saagar is Indian, right? Who is the Indian version of MLK? Don't say Gandhi, because Gandhi hated black people. I said, who is the white, if you don't like MLK, think of someone else. Fred Hampton. Who is the white version of Fred Hampton? Was alive then and that's alive today. Who was the Indian version? Who was the Asian version? So as much as they hate black people, whenever they always give an example, they always got to say, well, Malcolm X said, and Martin Luther King said, and Fred Hampton said. It's like, yeah, what did the people of your community say? Oh, they weren't saying anything. They were too scared to fight. They didn't want to get dog sicked on them, so they let someone else get dog sicked on them. But when it was time to get benefits for minorities, hey, I'm a minority too. Even though I didn't fight and even though I just got here, I'm marginalized too. Like, okay.
Chaotic. And again, like you, I tactically think it's a bad idea. But fundamentally, like you do agree with these protesters, I think illegals should be deported. I think they should leave. And you don't. And that's the fundamental difference.
Can you not see, and that's not even true what you just said, but can you not see?
Okay. Damn, I don't know if y'all didn't hear the last thing that I said, but I might have been muted, so I'll just keep playing the video.
The vast disparity between interrupting a church service and shooting a woman dead 3 times in the face and facing zero accountability.
Well,
and one being a group of powerless private citizens, and the other being the full force of the United States federal government and the largest law enforcement budget in history, larger than all but 13 countries' militaries, and the vice president of the United States saying they have, quote, absolute immunity. Like, which one is more of a danger, more of a threat,
Again, I think
more of
it's
something to be
incredibly
upset
narrow
about?
view of it, considering the fact that not that long ago they actually did have the full power of the government. Nobody actually sustained any real charges.
They don't
but they
now,
did, and that's why
Saagar.
it's
they don't now.
Yes, because much of the tactics of the way that they're behaving, and I will even freely admit, much of the way of the tactics that the right and ICE and all of them are employing make it so that very likely these freaks are all going to be back into power. But if we were trying to talk here about the way that this all arises, and the way that liberal protest norms have evolved now to this point, and where the entire democratic liberal industrial complex will defend it and or stay silent or criticize it only as tactical, you can then realize why most people who may find the ICE thing distasteful are going to be like, yeah, well, look at what we've got facing us whenever the other side is in power. And that's exactly what happened with Keith Ellison.
But Saagar, we can always go back to it's this person's, it's that person's fault, it's this backlash, it's that backlash, because you love to start with the liberal, the Black Lives Matter liberal protest tactics that, yes, at times, the fringe of that was very violent.
It was not,
and not anything that should be condoned, and was incredibly counterproductive in terms of the goals of that movement. But you never look to what precipitates that, which is decades of systematic racism, which is police killings of unarmed Black men. So how is there no accountability for that? That leads to an extreme reaction.
If we want to relitigate it was a completely fake crisis. The number people can go check if they want to. The number of unarmed Black people who were killed by police in the year 2019.
Saagar, I know you're not genuinely.
It's not even more than 50.
Genuinely asserting that there is no racism in this country.
No, I'm not.
And that there hasn't been systematic racism, not just from Republicans, but from both parties, right, in power, that have criminalized, that have made it so that you have, a mass incarcerated population that has backed redlining. I mean, we can go through the history. So it's not accurate to say that protest movement was based on nothing and came out of nowhere, because
it was based on fake statistics and a fake idea. That is just empirical.
No, that's not true.
No, it is true.
There is no ability to create that kind of a mass movement out of nothing. Right.
Well,
you have to acknowledge that there has to have been something.
Yes,
there.
I think there was mass psychosis. There's a big difference.
To just start with the things that liberals do that you don't like, and you love to act like that is the biggest problem. So, for example, again, you're so exercised about this incursion into church, you have nothing to say about the way that systematically across the country, religious worship spaces have been.
He has nothing to say about systemically across the country how Black churches were burned down. So Saagar just like, oh yeah, well, of course there's racism. But then when you start to try to get into racism, he's trying to poo-poo it as if and just dismiss it. So this dude is a bigot. Obviously, Krystal Ball is unequipped to have this conversation. At least she did offer some level of context that, hey, this movement didn't just come out. He tried to say, oh, it was based on fake statistics. What he wants to say is that, oh, look at the number of how many unarmed Black men were killed. So he's going to try to say that the number was minuscule, so we shouldn't trip. Well, look at the number of how many anti-Asian hate incidents, which they called crimes when they promoted to the public, but then when they want to get legislation passed, they say it was an incident. An incident was someone saying go back to China. That didn't stop them from getting legislations passed bipartisan that they framed as the C-19 Hate Crime Act, which mentioned Asians specifically over 14 times and allocated hundreds of millions, right? Saagar doesn't care about that. He doesn't ask where the money went. He doesn't think that's a scam. He doesn't think that was woke identity politics. But if you just change the name from Stop Asian Hate to Stop Black Hate, then suddenly he wants to just blame the entire Black community, not who's funding the organization. Let's just blame the Black community. And then he starts to lean into all sorts of negative stereotypical tropes. So I'm like, okay, fine. All stereotypes matter. So, you know, Saagar in GT.
We can go through the history. So it's not accurate to say that that protest movement was based on nothing and came out of nowhere, because
it was based on fake statistics and a fake idea. That is just empirical truth.
No, that's not true.
No, it is true.
There is no.
Also, he didn't name the fake statistics or anything. He just said, yeah, it is true. More of the trust me, bro. Like, why didn't he name the fake statistics? Like, do you even know? Like, you got to lay off the Fox News, bro.
Ability to create that kind of a mass movement out of nothing, right?
Well,
you have to acknowledge that there has to have been something there.
Yes, I think there was mass psychosis. I mean, there's a big difference.
You love to just start with the things that liberals do that you don't like.
Yeah.
And you love to act like that is the biggest problem. So for example, again, you're so exercised about this.
He says he criticizes the right all the time, but he doesn't criticize them for racism unless they're calling him a Jeet. If they say nigger, he doesn't care. Well, stop saying it in rap music. Okay, cool. All of my rappers, stop saying nigga in rap songs and start saying Pajit. And then when they say Pajit, then I'll say, hey, well, the rappers are saying it in a rap song. So, you know, since you can't help yourself and people can't help themselves, and since rap music is just, you know, so hypnotic, they said Jeet in rap songs. I got to call you a Jeet. I just can't help myself.
Incursion into church, you have nothing to say about the way that systematically across the country, religious worship spaces have been violated and made unsafe by the attacks from this federal government.
But I think that I've explained like quite clearly that there is a difference, and because you don't,
the difference is that one is way worse, and it's ICE agents coming in and arresting
people. You fundamentally
people.
think that illegals just have a right to sanctuary church. I don't. I don't think criminals who are here illegally have a right to sanctuary anywhere. The only sanctuary they have is in the home where they came from.
Were past presidents able to deport undocumented immigrants?
I'm glad that you talked about this. There's this new fake statistic going around about how Obama was able to deport 3 million people. What he did is he reclassified turning people away at the border. Internal enforcement was an all-time low. All they did was reclassify, just like they did with mass shootings. Here is the basic truth.
Were previous presidents able to deport undocumented immigrants?
Oh, were they able to deport illegals at an extremely low rate and at a net rate in which it resulted in the last Democratic administration?
Do you genuinely think
10 to 15 million people here illegally?
Not violating church services was the key reason?
No, I don't.
Yeah, of course.
No,
I mean, because it's ridiculous. And they're doing the same things at schools. Okay, so this is something that is genuinely different under the Trump administration. They rescinded the guidance that previously said schools and houses of worship are off limits.
Mm-hmm.
And that was fine with you. You had nothing to say about that.
I don't think
I don't take seriously your now deep concern about.
Yeah, like she said, you was fine with that. You had nothing to say with it. And he'll try to push back and say, no, I wasn't fine with it. Why weren't you this animated? Where was this impassioned version of Saagar in GT?
The sanctity of the church services, and oh my God, the people are so traumatized.
As people know, I'm an atheist. I don't particularly care that much about sanctity of churches. I care about liberal protest norms because I can see, and I lived through, literal mass psychosis where people were storming buildings, restaurants, streets.
He keeps talking about liberal protests, but he won't talk about the conservative protests that are saying white lives matter, white people are victims, we need more white babies. He won't talk about those protests, how obnoxious and how violent that they can get, but he will complain about liberal politics and say, all liberal politics is BLM. Okay, who's funding that? What racial demographic is funding that? And then he just gets silent.
And that was fine with you. You had nothing to say about that.
I don't think
I don't take seriously your now deep concern about the sanctity of the church services. And oh my God, the people are so traumatized.
As people know, I'm an atheist. I don't particularly care that much about sanctity of churches. I care about liberal protest norms because I can see, and I lived through, literal mass psychosis where people were storming buildings.
Another thing for all of the heritage people that like to say, this is a white Christian nation. Well, Sagar and Jetty would be called a sand nigger by many people that consider themselves heritage American. Not only that, he's not white and he's not Christian and he's not a heritage American. He definitely ain't no foundational. So, and on top of that, to put a big bow on top of that, he's an atheist. How does that comport with being a white Christian nation? So as much as he's railing against, yeah, we got to get the illegals out of here. Like, bruh, don't you know that they still see you as a street shitter? They see you as a Jeet. So you talking about all this American values, bro. They looking at you as if you need to, their MAGA is looking at you like, MIGA, go make India great again. Me personally, you know, I'm not that radical. I just want Sagar to just stop denigrating and hating on my people. You know what I mean? I would have words with him if I ever seen him in real life, but I'm not on the deport the Jeets, yeet the Jeet. But most of the people, from what I see on the MAGA maniac right, the woke, wacky, weird right, they are treating him with the same energy that made Vivek Ramaswamy run off social media like a whiny little hoe.
Was the key reason?
No, I don't.
Yeah, of course.
No,
I mean, because it's ridiculous. And they're doing the same things at schools. Okay, so this is something that is genuinely different under the Trump administration. They rescinded the guidance that previously said schools and houses of worship are off limits. And that was fine with you. You had nothing to say about that.
I don't think
I don't take seriously your now deep concern about the sanctity of the church services.
To me,
and,
it's
oh my
not
God,
about
that people are so traumatized.
As people know, I'm an atheist. I don't particularly care that much about sanctity of churches. I care about liberal protest norms because I can see, and I lived through, literal mass psychosis where people were storming buildings, restaurants, streets, everywhere, rioting, looting, destroying property, exploding our murder rate, destroying the city that I literally lived in, to the point where we still have the same problems that from 5-6 years ago now. At that time, like, that's why you're saying like it's an old thing. It's not. Like, we live with the enduring consequences of that. In fact, literally across the nation, multiple cities
still blaming BLM, which by proxy is blaming black people. He's saying his city hasn't recovered who was in the leadership positions in his city. So instead of his people, the elected officials, the public figures, the people that are in power, instead of them having to take responsibility, it's been 6 years since these protests that he's railing against. You mean to tell me that they're still failing 6 years later? Maybe the leadership is incompetent or low IQ. Maybe they just can't cut it. Why isn't that being brought up? Because right now, anyone, whatever job you're at, if you're saying, man, the reason why I'm failing at my job or the reason why I'm not performing at the level that I should be is because of BLM. And you saw what happened with the George Floyd protests. Like, so how many more years would they need to recover? 6, 12?
and places and areas which I love have been ruined completely, largely because of BLM and the so-called criminal justice movement that followed and exploded through all of the people who are actually in power.
So then he tries to denigrate the so-called criminal justice movement, but then he will rail against people and act like the January 6th protesters were given a raw deal. So he talks about his people like, my friends were journalists and they had to, you know, they were locked up. Okay, you're framing that as if they were fairly punished. So that means that they face injustice by the justice system. So if you're against injustice, then aren't you for criminal justice? What is the issue with criminal justice, right? I don't want to see some white person get railroaded. I don't want to see some white person get brutalized by the cops and the cops get off. That's injustice. But if they can frame criminal justice inherently as a black issue, then people they don't want to deal with it. No, black people are criminal. They get what they deserve. And then suddenly a white person gets killed and they're like, we have to do something. Like, what do we have to do? I mean, If y'all said nothing was wrong with the system, there's nothing to protest. Let the system do what it do. If we can't all be equally comfortable, we'll all be equally uncomfortable. So if police is unaliving black people disproportionately, then hey, just let them run amok and everyone gets to unalived. You know what I mean? We'll still be disproportionate, but at least it will spread, right? So that the heinousness and the barbarism is spread equally, right? We don't want to be DEI victims. We don't want to be affirmative action victims. Why should black people have to face the brunt of the brutality? All violence matters, right? All brutality matters, right? Isn't that essentially, what people are kind of advocating for? People should be treated the same and treated fairly. Okay, so if we all should be treated fairly with no special exceptions, then we should all be treated unfairly with no special exceptions. The same logic holds, right?
Liberal protest norms, because I can see, and I lived through literal mass psychosis where people were storming buildings, restaurants, streets, everywhere, rioting, looting, destroying property, exploding our murder rate, destroying the city that I literally lived in, to the point where we still have the same problems that from 5-6 years ago now at that time. Like, that's why you're saying
if y'all still have the same issues from 5-6 years ago, that is political incompetence. Call out the people in the leadership positions. Or what they say, stop acting like a victim, stop complaining and move. If that city is so bad, why is he still living there? Because ain't that what they tell black people? Y'all keep complaining about crime in the hood. Why don't y'all just pack up and move? Why won't Saagar and Jeethi just pack up and move? Stop complaining. You have the money. You're not a victim.
It's an old thing. It's not. Like, we live with the enduring consequences of that. In fact, literally across the nation, multiple cities and places and areas which I love have been ruined completely, largely because of BLM and the so-called criminal justice movement that followed and exploded through all of the people who are actually in power. People like Keith Ellison, who have nothing to say whenever a literal church is violated here, because to them, that is permissible. Whereas any sort of action to arrest people here illegally is what really gets them all spun up.
He's saying the church is violated. Nothing happened to these people. He's saying that so he's against reparations. He's against black people getting compensation for hundreds of years of unpaid labor, hundreds of years of Jim Crow, racial discrimination, subjugation, targeted discrimination, mass incarceration, right? You guys shouldn't get anything for that, right? Get over it. You know what I mean? That's just what happens in the world. Here, if you don't like it, go back to Africa. But suddenly we should be super sympathetic to the people at church because someone came in and did some annoying chants. They're victims because someone walked in and did a protest of ICE unaliving a white woman. And somehow this is supposed to be the same as black people getting their churches bombed. Much of it was government sanctioned, or they turned a blind eye to it. That happened here many times before Saagar's family even immigrated here, before he was anchored here. He wants us to get over that and, stop complaining, you know what I mean? But somehow we're supposed to be outraged and incensed that some people came into a church and were chanting things that they didn't like. You want to talk about snowflake?
Up about.
But
they have the same selective justice.
That's also,
they are in no
that's
way
also not true.
But it
because
is.
Saagar, before this, multiple thousand federal agents storming the streets of Minneapolis, the whole region, Twin Cities. Before that, ICE was doing enforcement. There was immigration enforcement in Minnesota.
No, that's not true.
That is 100% true. Of course it's true.
Because this is the problem. Sanctuary cities make it so that the jails do not turn over or report.
That is not true.
No, it is
That
true.
is not true.
They do not cooperate.
So before I block you and get you up out of here, because you're clearly, you're not equipped to debate me. You're not intellectually formidable, and fix that blurry profile pic, right? Aren't you supposed to be of the high IQ community? This is not a great representation of yourself, but I will read your slovenly, drunk, incoherent comment just so I can dissect and dismantle it. Nobody nowhere should get reparations. Okay. People have already got reparations. So while you're saying nobody should get it, somebody in many groups have already got it. Are you stupid? What about? I'm not stupid, but clearly you are. I'm smarter than you. I'm better than you. My relatives all the way back then, it was like, what the hell are you talking about? Grammatically incorrect. Stay in school. Drugs are bad. Okay. Your brain is fried. This is all over the place. My relatives all the way back then was slaves. Your relatives weren't slaves, and they definitely weren't slaves in America. We're talking about America, not the entire globe. When people say America first, they don't say the world first, the planet first. So your people weren't slaves here, so I don't even know why you're bringing this up. We're talking about the United States of America, the place that your family immigrated to. They were failing in their homeland, so they immigrated here. It was slaves. Yes, the Irish just get over it like the rest of us did. You didn't get over it. And then if you did get over it, why are you over here whining? Once I bring it up, you should just get over it, right? But instead you're whining. And the Irish people didn't get over it. Irish people were paid freedom dues, which are reparations. So your people were paid reparations, and you weren't slaves. You were indentured servants. Indentured servitude is not the same as slavery. I mean, are you that stupid or what? You look stupid, but like, are you like mentally? Because if you're mentally challenged, I won't go any further. I don't like to beat up on the mentally disabled. You seem severely intellectually disabled. So just let me know in the chat, because I don't like to beat up on the handicapped. I'm sorry, but the chat is broken, so it's hard to type out anything without messing it up. Is the chat broken or is your brain broken? But back in the Irish, and you know what? This is what other people don't like to do. So I'm gonna do this for you. This is gonna be a little because I was getting ready to shut this video now. And shout out to Zephyr Warden, or you know, whoever this goofball is. But yeah. Here we go with the revisionist history. Yes, Irish was slaves. Well, if you want to be grammatically correct, is were, not was. But yes, the Irish were slaves in America. Look it up. I have looked it up. You weren't slaves. Indentured servitude is not slaves. You may have been enslaved in your own country, but Ireland is not America. And if you were enslaved in Ireland, it was by your people who look like you. So go take it up with the people in your homeland. You come from an immigrant background. That's okay, bro. There's nothing wrong with coming from an immigrant background, but stop acting like you're a heritage American or you're a foundational. You're not. Your family was failing and they immigrated here. They were fleeing famine, filth, feudalism, and failure. I mean, these are facts, irrefutable at that. But let me just play, you know what? Let me give y'all uno momento. I'm going to give y'all a quick rundown. Just let me hit y'all with a quick intermission so I could pull something up. So uno momento.
With me. I got the bad niggas envy. You got a bunk bitch, huh? I love when the bad bitches hit me. They love when I'm bagging them 50. They love when I'm grabbing that semi. They love when I'm bagging them 50. They love when I'm grabbing that semi. I got a bad bitch with me. I got the bad niggas envy. You got a bunk bitch, huh? I love when the bad bitches hit me. They love when I'm bagging them 50. They love when I'm grabbing that semi. They love when I'm bagging them 50. They love when I'm grabbing that semi.
I might pull up on your block, whipping and hit me, gripping and send me. I'm on one cause I've been sipping some red meat. These bitches wanna chew because that pimpin' is in me. It ain't on me and I ain't never been no phony. If I can't get no money with you, then we can't be homies. Ran a few racks up, had to get it by my lonely. I didn't hit it before, now shorty wanna give me some more like Buster. Damn, that ass shake like jam, that's why I call her Smucker. She just call me daddy every single time I fuck her. Get up in that box and hit it hard, it might rupture. Now she's soaking wet and then she wanted me to ass fuck her. After I eat that pussy up just like the last supper. I shown so much love now I don't feel the hate. Yo nigga rap cool but he's still a fake. I came about the mud and start dealing weight. Now I'm invested in stocks and real estate. way. My bitch gon' ride for me even if the wheels are break. I be killing shit from the wilderness like a wilderness. If it's a play to make, I'ma be smashing up quickly. You hit my line, then I decline. I'm bagging up 50s. Easy.
Okay, we're back activated. So where is this person at? The dude that's over here lying. So here he is saying that the Irish got over it. Get over it like the rest of us did. No, your people didn't get over it. You were indentured service. Don't take my word for it. No one has to take my word for it, but we like to give scholarship and bring things up in real time. Irish servants were legally entitled to receive freedom dues, another word for reparations, euphemism for reparations, such as land, tools, or money at the end of the labor contracts. And many of them got all land, tools, and money, although the actual fulfillment of these dues often varied. Now, yeah, some of them probably got screwed over and didn't get paid, but a significant amount of them were paid reparations, land, and money. The indentured servitude was contractual, usually like 7 to 10 years, and then they would be free. And after they were free, they were given things. They were given handouts. So they didn't pull themselves up by their bootstraps. So I don't even really know why you're trying to frame this as some sort of slave. Slaves weren't paid anything. This is why you said we got over it. Yeah, y'all got over it because you got land. Your indentured servants got land and said, get over it just like I did. Okay, give us land just like they gave y'all, and then we'll get over it. Give us money just like they gave y'all, and we'll get over it. No, you niggas don't deserve no money, but somehow your people did. They were calling y'all Irish and white niggers and stuff, right? Your people should get money and freedom dues, but my people shouldn't get reparations. Here he is whining, saying no one should get reparations, but your people did. Your people were coming over here. They were filthy, dirt and crust all over their face. Famine. They were failing over there. They didn't fight to change the conditions here. They came over here, worked, got buck broken, were subjugated, mistreated. And after all that, they said, hey, look, could we assimilate into whiteness? Because we don't like those niggas. We know y'all treated us like crap, but hey, we're not like the niggas. So could y'all treat us a little better? So yeah, many of you guys came over here and got buck broken into whiteness. We just got to call it what it is. And you were paid handsomely for that. So let's just call it how it is, bruh. Just stop lying. And you know what? I think I'm going to go ahead and, because I've heard enough of the debate, I think y'all got the gist, and we already been rocking for 3.5 hours here. Has been a fruitful stream, I believe. Y'all could have been anywhere in the world. Y'all chose to be here with me, at least momentarily. And for that, I thank you. So I'm going to get ready to wind it down. I might come back a little bit later in a few hours, hit y'all with a double header. I might be. I'm debating it right now. It depends on how people respond to this video, but I sincerely appreciate those viewing this concurrently and that will be watching this on the replay. Your viewership does not go unnoticed. It is immensely appreciated. Y'all know I got a rundown of the visuals, so y'all should stick around, engage with the chat, and don't forget, it won't cost you a fee. The likes are free. Time for a like intermission. We kindly request that you show love to the channel's creator and platform by leaving a like, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest content. Liking posts is completely free and helps the algorithm boost our reach. We want to grow the community larger and larger. So thank you all who take the time to support us. It does mean the world to us and doesn't go unnoticed. And Tutney says, let's go. The double header. Yeah, I'm in kind of one of those moods. So I might do the double header. It's about a 50-50 chance. And I love Miss Jackie Gaines standing on my business. She asks, Zephyr Warden has been given the chance to provide statistics with the rest of the chat. Well, she didn't. That wasn't a question. This is what she asks. Please no attacks. Who was your people? But yeah, so then she followed up with this, and no statistics have been provided. See, we will look up things and bring up the information in real time. He had no stats to back it up. All he had was just a bunch of bloviating, emotional, incoherent babble. I'm bringing up facts, statistics, things that can be proved by documentation. He is just going off of vibes and lies. Let's just call it what it is. Now, if you appreciated this broadcast and you would like to make a contribution, you can do so freely by liking, sharing, commenting, and or subscribing to the channel. I prefer that you do all of them, but at least 2 or a few of those things should surely suffice. Leaving a comment after the stream will help boost the algorithm. And if you are feeling generous and you would like to make a financial contribution, well then,
Don't you think it's about time you gave me my money? Where my money? I need cash. Please send that money. Hey, please send that money. Hey, please send that money. Where my money? I need cash. Where my money? I need cash. Where my money?
okay, so before we get out of here, you know I'm gonna hit you. Yeah. Hey. B-Eazy, that dude, shit so hot it's burning up. Just go ahead and turn this up. I bring the pain like an aftermath of a car wreck. There's a lot of niggas that say they real. To me, that shit is far-fetched. Them cats is pussy. They really is on some feminine stuff. I ride up on them with the 40 ounces. The definition of adrenaline rush. What it do is sweet like cinnamon puffer. My niggas is rough like Willow Pass. Grew up out on Mary Mac, but I used to hang on Willow Pass. These birds that I roll with, outcasts and misfits. Better zip lips when you get hit. When the fifth spit, flat line in your pit. Trap habits is black magic, no voodoo. Get the bands like Buku for the cocaine to go poo-poo. Most these niggas is foo-foo, so I'm shitting on them like doo-doo. I can't fuck with y'all like tofu. I'm just saying, man, like Goku. Bad bitches at the house with me watching Netflix or Roku. Fuck them both at the same time, and I swear to God it was so cool. Street legend, real boss, I call shots cause I'm still saucy. I know some G's to the bike crack on shite racket and fly back out to Milwaukee. When they hit me flow, they say I be burning up, burning up. Cookies to the drawer is what we burning up, burning up. What you ain't know, oh, we burning up, burning up. This shit so hot, it's burning up. Just go ahead and turn this up. When you hit me flow, say I be burning up, burning up. Cookies to the drawer is what we burning up, burning up. What you ain't know, oh, we burning up, burning up. This shit so hot, it's burning up. Just go ahead and turn this up.
B-Eazy, that dude. B-Eazy, that dude. Yeah, they know the name. Stacking up the paper, but having money ain't a thing. Standing on business, burning hotter than a flame. From the block to the boardroom, you gotta stand the rain. B-Eazy, that dude. Yeah, they know the name. Stacking up the paper, but having money ain't a thing. Standing on business, burning hotter than a flame. From the block to the boardroom, you gotta stand the rain. B-Eazy, that dude. Yeah, they know the name. B-Eazy, that dude. Yeah.